Okay, there, it's off.
Okay, so is everyone here?
Yep.
I don't see, is Sandy here?
Sandy's not in yet.
Okay. Out of the goodness of our hearts, we're going to wait a couple of seconds to hopefully get Sandy in here. So let me see if she's texted me. She often texts me when she needs help.
Me too.
So. Hi, Maisie. Hi, Lakin.
Sandy's in.
Oh, Sandy's in. That's all I get, just one wave. Okay. All right. So we are, make sure we're not going to, I'm just going to call the study session on our equity policy study session now. We're not bringing into an actual board meeting at this point. So Marty, do you want to lead us in this, to frame this, how you want to do it?
Yeah, thank you for that, President Methner. If you remember back in late September, early October at our board retreat, we had discussion as a board of 5 superintendent included around a desire to consider an equity policy. And so I think that's a very important move forward for our school district to establish an equity policy to make it what we do moving forward. Therefore, you know, after all of us, you know, equity will live on within the Port Angeles School District, and I think that's an important step. Usually when we adopt policies, Wasda will have a model policy that we can utilize to take to our policy committee and add, you know, the local flavor of the Port Angeles School District by way of the policy committee and bring it to the board and adopt accordingly. This one's not so easy, and I think rightfully so. Our equity policy will really define who we are moving forward. And Wasda doesn't have a model policy for equity. What they do have is a page on their page that. Hey Jenny, your mic's on. So what they will do is they have a page with districts across the state that have equity policies within their own school systems. And there's approximately 30 school districts called out on this page. And so just to start the conversation, I provided the board with 3 equity policies from districts across the state. One was relatively local and the other 2 were not so local. But just to start the conversation on what a equity policy could look like for the Port Angeles School District. My vision of this time, I don't believe, you know, unless you guys are an amazing team, but I don't believe we're going to be able to start and finish this conversation today. I think this is just an open window of time for our board to really start digging into the components of what you would like to see as it relates to an equity policy for our school district. Again, I attached about 3 different, which I thought were pretty good representative policies from Wasda, but there's another 28 out there, or 27 that you can, you know, review. Some are very minimal as far as verbiage. Others are a little more detailed. I offered the more detailed version. And the reason why I selected the 3 that I'm presenting to you tonight is they got into the components of equity that need to really be addressed, in my opinion, from leadership to staffing decisions to curriculum and teaching. So they were more detailed than many of the policies that I reviewed on the Wasda website. So with that being said, President Methner, my goal this evening is just to give time to our board to have good, healthy conversation on, you know, what are the components that we really want to include, in our policy and start that important work moving forward. And this might take us multiple sessions to, settle on what we would like to see as a district policy. Once we get to that point and we've settled on some language as far as policy is concerned, I would like to have the ability to take that to the policy committee out of respect for the work that they do, so that they can add their, opinions to the policy as well. So this may take us a few months to settle on what exactly we want to stand for in equity. So with that being said, I want to turn it over to the board to have conversation based on what you've read, what you're seeing, what you don't like, what you do like, and let's just open it up for conversation.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was having trouble finding my unmute. So I think maybe the easiest way to start is, I believe we've all reviewed the policies that were given to us by Marty as sort of a starting and jump off point. So I feel that we could maybe just jump in with one of us saying, what are the things that maybe you found to be things you really want our equity policy to look like? Does that make sense to you? Dr. Long, you're the only one with unmuted, so.
Well, when you use the word equity, first of all, it means a million things to a million different people. So we've got to somehow or another start off defining what we mean by that, not what somebody else means by it, but what we meaning. So because when I read these things, one of them I thought was gobbledygook. It just went, it looked like, two of them looked like they had copied each other. The language was almost exactly the same. In fact, I did a word check and a lot of it was exactly the same language. So they either one did one and then the other one copied it, or vice versa. I don't like a lot of gobbledygook. Don't put down anything in writing that you cannot do. And just writing equity and using the same vocabulary and just writing paragraph after paragraph, Cindy, I'm with you on that. It doesn't get anywhere. It doesn't do anything. It's just gobbledygook. And this is too important an issue, I think, for everybody, particularly right now with a lot of political issues going on in the world and the country and in our state and county. We're going to have to be very, very sensitive to that, I think. And it's going to be hard. I see this as a very difficult task for the board, for 5 of us to do, to try and even begin to even think about what this is meaning for us. So I really hope that we can, I really hate that we're not sitting around a table together with lots of paper around and we can be writing and wordsmithing and doing that. But I think the first thing is we've got to define what equity is for this school district. And then we need to really be sensitive in what we put on paper. That it doesn't become a political document, because remember that we are a political school board. We are not here as a Democrat or Republican, neither of which am I. I'm an independent. But I think we need to be real careful about that when we start writing things down. And then the other thing, when we make a policy, then the superintendent and his staff have to come behind us and write down procedures. Is that going to be the same way with this policy, Marty, or somebody?
Yes, it could be. It could be. I think.
Or do you want procedures in this policy?
Well, I think those that I shared with you are a little broader and have more procedures kind of part of the policy. So
Some things are real specific and some aren't.
yeah, so that's really discretion of the board. How detailed do you want the policy? And then, you know, the less detailed the policy, the more detailed the procedure, and vice versa. So that's really at discretion of the board. And I believe, you know, our strategic plan, when we get to that, and the equity, you know, pillar of our strategic plan will also be a form of a procedure as well, and measurables to hold ourselves accountable to. So
Okay.
Okay, well, Sandy, I'm going to say I really love the idea that we all sort of talk about what does equity. I mean, if it feels like I feel like a student right now, where I have to write out what does equity mean to me, because I think that everybody who's here has a different idea of what equity means, and then we are going to have to figure out where we all agree on what equity is, because you bring so many things to your definition of equity. So does anybody have just sort of the bones of a working idea of what they feel equity is? Anything?
I would start out with inclusion. I would want somehow or another. I see it as an inclusion, that everyone is invited to do the best that they can. I think we already do this, but I mean that everyone, every student is included. Every family is included in whatever it is we're going to do. That's the only word that I would like to, if you want to start having words.
I do. Who else has a word they want to throw out?
I liked this is Katie. I liked, Kent had a phrase that said, successfully preparing all students for their futures. In addition to just those words that I'd like to throw in, I'd also like to say that the components of the policy that I would like to see are not only the kind of the equity statement that Sandy talked about, like a definition, what it means to Port Angeles School District, but or to the board of the Port Angeles School District, but I really feel like it needs to kind of outline the beliefs and values as well. I also think that the policy needs to have some sort of statement towards accountability. And I really think that there are more words beyond equity that need defining, and I would therefore suggest that the policy also have definitions, shared definitions of certain words like inclusion. There's another word that I found many times researching this that's called equity. Equity in education, or education equity was another one. So I got a little confused as to the difference between equity and education equities, or education equity in education. I'm already fumbling those out, right? So anyway, those were my 2 cents. And then the other part was that I wasn't sure where the policy might live, in which series. Whether we were going to look at it for our board series, a student series, or the course and instruction series. So that was my other component that I was unclear on.
What do you mean by series? Did you say SERIES?
Yes.
Board?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what does that mean? Board series, or?
It's the way that the policies are organized.
Oh,
So
okay.
the 1000 series is the board series.
I see what you're saying.
And the 3000 series is the student series.
So where do you think it would go?
You know, to be honest, like most of the policies that were given to us as examples were in a series that we don't even have. So I don't know. I guess I don't know yet. I don't have any answer.
Like, Wasda doesn't have a policy.
Yeah. But don't you think we have to decide? I mean, really, that's part of it. Are we going with a student-focused lens,
Yes.
a board-focused lens, an adult-focused lens? What is our,
Yes.
what are we, this, I mean,
Maisie has her hand up. I agree, Sarah.
it's a huge topic. Who's this written for? Society at large.
Unmute yourself, Maisie. Say something.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt.
No,
but
please.
I like the Quincy School District part about the leadership. When we were at the Wasda thing, I listened to their student rep talk about their equity policy, and the specific like leadership part I really like about the modeling and engaging others in the critical conversations to like analyze ourselves, because I think that what you were talking about, Sarah, about who do we direct this at, I think a lot can be done for just like school culture, you know, like everyone in the building puts out this like empathy and inclusion like you were talking about, and we have these like conversations within ourselves and as students and as teachers and as administration about like who we are as people and how we can get over biases and like just some self-reflection. So the leadership part about modeling, I think especially for teachers and administration, is really good, but engaging others and talking about it I think is also really cool.
Yeah, I like that too. And part of it will be like what Katie said about the equity being everyone's gets a fair shot at future success. And that's really important. And then I think that we should use language that also will speak about culture or just student attitude as well. Like maybe use words like a fair shot to become the best version of yourself. So you're not just talking about what you will do in the future, but who you will become.
Yeah, I liked Maisie. I really like the Quincy School District too. The one I was right above that though, where it talks about naming and confronting the ways inequity currently operates, which I think is what we are talking about with definitions. We have to name what the problem is. And then when they say developing an equity lens across all parts of our system in ways that focus or addressing injustice as opposed to fixing kids. And I think to me that is really, I don't want to go out and have our administrators have to say, okay, kids, you're doing it all wrong, and we're going to fix it and give you the right answers. Because I don't think that that's helpful. We have to name what is the issue and then go from there. Does that make sense? We need to focus on the injustices that are happening too. I mean, to me, that's what equity is that we're focusing on why things are harder for certain of our groups than others. And how do we read that I come from a very different place than Jacob comes from, or I'm trying to pick on, I don't know. Anyway, I come from a different world than other people, and I can't say what equity means necessarily for others. So how do we get a working definition that really does encompass everybody? That's very difficult.
Yes.
So that was just me on a soapbox, not me making any actual answers. Someone else? Anyone?
I'd like to add too that I think we could also really benefit from putting in like the celebrating difference type thing and cultures and things that could really go along with our indigenous tribes as well, with like celebrating different, I don't know, like ceremonies and cultures and that kind of things, and understanding each other. I think that's important, especially in our community.
Cindy, you have anything you want to add?
So I'm gonna tag a little bit on what Katie said. So first of all, I want to say the board has a committee called the District Equity Team. So I want to remind the board that we do have that, and that's a group that's kind of been meeting off and on. So I would hope that we would take that District Equity Team that's led by Marty and Michelle, and bring students, community members, staff back together to really talk about this whole process. Well, I've been engaged in this work for a long time. I would suggest the board to go look at the Highlight Public Schools. Highlight Public Schools has a whole series. And as Katie talked about, where are you going to put it in the series? They have a 0-0 series that they talk about equity. So if you go look at that, and I also have, so one policy talks about equity, race, and identity. The next one talks about equity policy terms and phrases defined, like Katie talked about. It defines all those. Institutional practices, adult learning on race and identity, culture responsive practices, institute on race and identity, and parent and family engagement. And why I know that people want to get policy done, but I'm all about deliverables and what are going to be our benchmarks and what are we going to measure it against? Because we can sit here and we can talk about this, but I also think that there are many people in the community that are looking to the school district of how can we could make this a bigger thing than just the school district. About we could use the model across our community, as Maisie talks about. But we really have to involve students in this, and because this really is about students, and we really have to have, as you know, I've heard is that we have different staff members at different places. Some who are at the beginning, and some who really understand it, and just, you know, the indifferences that we have with each other, with the groups. But I think it's work that will take some time to do. But I think that we really should look at some districts across, and Highland has spent a long time doing it, and we talk about that. And then the thing about policy and procedures is that you have to live by them. So that's kind of my comment about it.
Cindy, would you like to talk to us a little bit about what we were discussing before we came into this meeting about sovereignty issues?
So, and as Maisie talked about, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background is that, so why we've been talking, I mean, districts have been talking about equity and race for many years. I mean, at least over 20 years that I've been on the board, and me serving on the Wasda board. And, you know, we have many conferences. We all go to many conferences. But so the last couple years, I've been working very closely with tribes across the state, Tribal Leaders Congress. And so the relationship between school districts and tribes is government to government. They're their own sovereignty government. Each 29 tribes, plus the other tribes that aren't federally recognized, are their own government. So school districts have to do consultation, individual consultation with each tribe. So I'm just going to take Muckleshoot. Muckleshoot has, and I'm probably going to forget a few, you know, they have the 5 school district, they have the Puyallup school district, Kent school district, Bethel school district. I mean, their reservation and trust lands are so big that they encompass a whole bunch of districts. So like Toledo would encompass Marysville, Everett, could do Lake Stevens, Snohomish. I mean, there's so in a lot of that consultation, they do it together. But while we talk about this equity work, we really also have to address in the equity policy, the government to government relationship that we have with our tribal partners. And you'll start to see several bills were passed last year, and one that our board's going to have to work on is data sharing. There's a bill out there that you probably saw a copy because it was in policy and legal, that we're going to have to do a data sharing agreement with the tribe. And so what does that look like? Because tribes know their communities, and they want to help with educating their children, but they also want to know where their children stand and so how do we do that data sharing together? So I think that we need to keep that within that agreement, within our equity, that we also address the government to government relationships that pertain to our local tribes.
But is that data sharing really need to be part of our equity policy? I mean, isn't that going to be part of its own policy?
Yeah, but it was just an example Sarah was giving you, because there's going to be lots of consultation things that's going to happen between tribes and school districts. You'll continue to get legislation.
No, I understand that, and I agree with that, but I feel like an equity policy needs to apply to the whole of our district. And I understand that students their voice is obviously important, but I struggle when we talk about the students or the teachers or the administrators or the board or society. I just feel like with an equity policy, it needs to be a more holistic thing that everybody is involved in this. I don't want to focus on just that this is going to fall in our student policy or this is going to fall in our board policy, because I think the zero policy that you're talking about, Cindy, that's where it needs to be. And how Highline does it, where you're talking, maybe they have 8 or 9 different policies. That seems like it's really more going to be what we have to end up going towards, so that we just start looking at, I mean, you look at Maisie and Lakin. Are they, I mean, come on, they have as much knowledge about equity as Jeff or Marty do. I mean, this is what these kids are living. So I don't want to separate them out. They're part of everyone's voices need to be involved in this plan. And how many students do you have on that equity group that you're talking about, the district equity team?
Marty has to answer that, but do we have any students?
Yeah, there's been.
Maisie seems to be pointing at herself.
There's not I mean, it's a totally voluntary team, or it's voluntary. You know, anybody shows up that wants to be a part of the conversation.
Okay.
So, you know, Macy's been there. We've had other students from the high school. We've had former students there. So yeah, there's, I'd say a handful of students that have been representative over the last 6 months is what I would guess. Again, Jonathan from the tribe did a really good job of getting out and trying to bring in some more students, and brought in some additional students to engage in the conversation. But again, it's there's not an official seat, so to speak. It's just show up if you want to talk and learn about, you know, equity within the Port Angeles community. At least that's where we've been.
I'm not talking about segregating. I'm just talking about including all those people on a committee. And maybe you want to form a task force to look at the overall bigger picture.
And we used to have that. Remember, Cindy? We used to both be on that. And then it just ended up becoming nothing but administrators would come and sometimes our Native American interventionists, and it just sort of became into a reporting out thing to 2 board members. It stopped becoming, I think, what it originally was intended to be. And
the feedback I got was that we were being talked to. And that there was really never any discussion. We were just being told what the district was doing. We never had the conversations. And it was also during the daytime where people couldn't come during the workout.
yes. So I don't know if we want to think about going back and revisiting what the original charter of that group was. I mean, that's many years ago now. It's going to be, I mean, it was already a going program and had sort of started going on the other side by the time I got on that. That was 12 years ago, I think, something like that.
It was more of a think tank issue of how do we deal and have better conversations and communication, which I think we're at a different place now. I think we have people in the community who really want to kind of talk about equity. I don't see it being a lot different than the capital group, the capital facilities group. Kind of the same thing, having representation from many different places. But I really feel like student voice is very important there. And not just our leadership kids. Kids from all different, and maybe even middle school kids. Some middle school kids would be good.
Anyone else want to chime in?
You know, when I think about this policy, it's meant to be a framework to kind of disrupt a predictable system that is, you know, kind of happening, right? And so it, you know, an interruption, so to say, right? Or counteract, right? And one of the things that we kind of already talked about was how we're going to be accountable for this. And I just wanted to mention a few things that I kind of gleaned from the policies that I read through. And it's really, what we need to look for is a persistent pattern that kind of gets changed a little bit, right? So a good way to possibly look at that may be to look at breaking out our graduation rates by race, gender, and income, as well as our disciplinary actions, and actually looking at those, right? And I believe that those are already posted online. They're publicly posted online. But it's also the failure rates in your core classes. But it's to look for potentially some of the different races that may end up not actually having as high as student success in some areas as other races, and seeing if we can't lift them up, right? Let them close the gap, so to say, the equity gap. So, the accountability would be really to be able to annually look at this information together and see if there are some improvement plans that have already been put around them, or things that the superintendent could talk to, right? So anyway, those are just some more thoughts.
Katie, I have to say that you and Jake came into the school board at a very different time.
Don't say.
Prior to you coming on the board, the board would meet and we would look at all these issues, Katie, that you have just talked about. And we would look at test scores, and we would look at disciplinary policy, and we would see how many numbers of girls, how many numbers of 10th graders, how many numbers by race, how many numbers of this, that, and the other. We do that. We didn't do it last year, or we hadn't done it since you all have come on the board, because you came on in January, and in February we shut everything down. There was no standardized testing. The only thing that we have to even give us a hint at how students are doing academically is what Marty has shared, and we can, this hadn't been a normal year, I guess is what I'm trying to say to Katie and Jake. We usually do, Katie, just what you're talking about, where we break all the stuff out and we look at everything all the information that's given to us by race, gender, grade level, and so forth.
Right.
Cindy and Sarah, am I correct? Have I been locked up too long? Don't we do that? Hadn't we always done that every year?
I agree to both of those things. Yes, you've been locked up too long, but yes, we did do that. But no, I think I understand we can break everything out and I can get all those data points and Marty can give us all those data points, but we still, I think our equity policy needs to get to the why we're needing an equity policy and what does an equity policy actually mean. And then with that in mind, when we decide what equity means, then we start putting in the data points and going, well, that doesn't meet our policy and that doesn't meet our policy. I feel like we don't build from here to here. We need to build from here to here. And I think still, Sandy, I'm going to go back to what you said. I think we have to come up with a working definition for the Port Angeles School District. What is equity? Which is a huge, hard question.
Right. I think I have a hard time working at it from that angle, because to me, equity only makes sense with where there is inequity, right? To me, like, we're trying to make a policy for equity, we need to discuss all of the inequity so that we can create something that removes it or mitigates it in some way. And maybe also because I'm new to creating policy, that's just the way my brain works. So without discussing what we're trying to fix, it's hard for me to create language for what we're aiming at.
But what do you need to fix? Why do you need to fix something?
Okay, so I'll pose this question. Are there some inequities in our district?
What is equity?
What's that?
What's equity?
Wasn't that what we're trying to figure out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you want to use the inequities that exist, you have to be able to decide and decipher what is equity. Because
Are there injustices in our district?
okay, now you're talking another word. Is injustice and inequity the same thing to you?
Right. Oh, I don't want to play word games. What I mean to say is there are other things that we're trying
I
to.
don't either. I want to drill down.
Are we trying to fix things in our district? Do we admit that we have some problems in this area, even if we don't know exactly what equity is defined as? Right? Are we perfect, or we got things we need to work on?
Is that a personal question or no? Yes, I'm perfect, but also no, our district is not.
Okay.
Just ask my husband.
I think, Jake, you have really hit the nail on the head. You know, we all kind of dance around and this, that, and the other. And there are elephants in the room that people never want to identify, and that would be the inequities. Because then you got to get into some real detail about what's going on in the system. You know, we'd have to look at things like complaints and parent complaints, student complaints. I'll give you an example of this. I was sitting at a meeting about a year and a half or two ago, and a lady who used to write for the newspaper and also I think at one time was a commissioner, I had said, I was an audience member and the tableau was that we were talking about education, and she said, well, I'll just tell you one thing, Port Angela schools certainly don't educate all their children equally. And I mean, I was just speechless. And I turned to her, and I knew who she was. I had met her. I'd worked on a committee with her before. And I turned to her and I said, would you please be more specific? And she wouldn't. So what I'm saying, are those the kind of things that you're talking about, inequity? What are the inequities? Because I agree with you, until we know what the problem is, there's no way to solve it. You have to say what the problem is. If we want a policy if we don't have any problems, there's no need to spend this time talking about policies, right? Somebody give me a nod or an
Yep.
But anyway, I think that we've got to be real clear, and I think all of us are in the back of our minds. I think each of the five of us have either heard or been told, or a parent has said it to us, or a child, a student rep, or somebody has said something that led us to believe that maybe things aren't all equal in our school district. So I'm with you on that, Jake. I think and that's something that's really hard to sit down and name. Where are we going wrong? You know, I don't know the answer to that. And one thing I think that would be helpful is that maybe that group, whatever that group is called, and Sarah, whatever that old group was, or whatever, that body of knowledge, I guess, might be a place that the board can visit with. And before we start writing down a policy, maybe go to one of their meetings and hear what they're saying. If there are all kinds of community people there and teachers there and students there and whoever comes and goes there. Or, Cindy, we may need to restructure that so that there are 10 student members, or, 10 parents, or a group where there's more, a variety of inputs, I guess is what I'm saying, rather than people like Maisie and Lakin who are leaders in their schools. And that's what we expect of them. They're in leadership, whatever. I don't even know what leadership is, by the way. I don't know if that's a class. I don't know if it's what it is. I have no idea if it's a club. I don't know what it is. But we would expect the people that partake, I think, in whatever that is, in leadership, that they would already, be leaders. But what about those kids? What about those 10th graders we were looking at that aren't coming to school at all? That we don't even know where they are. I mean, maybe a principal knows where they are, but they're not being engaged in school in the last quarter or this semester or whatever. They're not even there. They don't exist. They're on roll, but they're not doing anything. So maybe we need to instead of trying to write things down tonight or whatever, maybe we need a plan for gathering more information. Maybe that's what I'm trying to get to. That we need to, as board members, start to bring some of our own information to this task, rather than just start copying a policy that another board has written. And I know that Aaron said, don't reinvent the wheel. And I don't like to reinvent wheels. I think it's time consuming. But this wheel, if we need it at all, then it needs to be specific to our school district, not Quincy, not Highline, not anybody else but us. And if there's some big issues here, then we need to look at what they are before we start writing down words that say blankety blank blah blah gobbledygook. And
So
that's what I think.
I'd like just to add on to what Katie said about the data. So a couple things. Because the CEDARS, the Comprehensive Education Data and Research System, is not accurate, and I'm just going to give you that the native accuracy that we're working on at the state and federal level, is that Native Americans, if you look at the population before we got CEDARS, our population was bigger. Our kids haven't gone away. They're still there, but they're just being classified under 2 race or more, or they're being classified under Hispanic. So that system is flawed. We know that. We've talked to Superintendent Reichel about that. He's willing to fix that data in the state if DOE doesn't fix it, because we know that we need to fix that system. Also, some of those minority groups are so small that they don't have enough to put in that category, so we can't really do that category. They don't show up as big enough in the category to take care of them. So, and I guess my question would be, is the board willing to open up the onion and deal with some issues that are in the community? There are issues in the community. I hear it every day at my job. Either people referencing different people or different races of people, or poverty people. So, and I see Maisie shake her head. So we need to be kinder, especially in this time that we're in. This is such a hard time right now. I mean, life is in general is hard enough, but we need to be kinder to people, and we need to correct people. I'm trying to correct people when they're not nice to people, but I think it's a bigger picture, and I do like the thing of trying to bring people together, but also really having a student group, and not just the leadership kids, but the kids, like you said, Sandy, who are not coming to school, or the kids who don't run for those offices because they don't have a lot of self-esteem, or they're scared because they don't understand. It's like parents who don't understand. We have parents that went through our school system and had a bad experience and never have stepped foot back in our schools again. And they only view their education by how they got educated. So we have to welcome them back in our schools, and we have to deal with it. I think we have some issues regarding discipline. I think we have some issues of how we're implementing the discipline policy in our district, because that discipline policy was changed last year by OSBI. We have to know where kids live, where they come from, who they are before we can teach them. We need to know their story. So, and I think we need to know the story between each of us, all of us. We all have to know each other's story to know where we come from. And
you hit it really well, Cindy, when you said that, you have these people that had a bad experience, right? If we're going to talk about equity, it shouldn't just be these measurable marks of grades, but also in the experience they had in school, because we're talking a huge chunk of someone's life. And even if they got great grades and got into a good college, but they had a bad experience, it's kind of worth it, but it could have been better, right? And I guess the journey, not the destination.
Well, I have to say, just for convenience sake, we cannot go back and examine every family history individually, and their parents and their grandparents. That's an impossible task for the schools to do. But we can be cognizant of cultural differences. And Cindy, I know that I've heard you say this since I've known you, is that you feel like that the community, I think, I'm going to paraphrase what I think you said in the past, that this community doesn't understand the tribal culture well enough, and therefore there are biases there. Am I right about that?
what I'm going to say is that Jamie Valdez has taught the clown language at our high school for over 20 years. We are blessed that she has done that. She has educated our students who've gone back to their parents and told them the truth, not what's in the textbooks. That's our problem, is that people are believing what's in the textbooks. People still believe what's in the textbooks. You know, and when we adopt curriculum, and it's not true because the textbooks are not true. That's why STI is so important. Jamie has done that. I've heard kids tell their parents, you are wrong. That is not the history. And that's, we are blessed that we've had Jamie and others within our community that have told the story. And I think we need more people to tell the story. But we are a community, and our school district is so, I mean, I just want everybody to love our school district. And I want those people that had a bad experience, like Jacob said, and still have that because they've not been back in our schools, to have a good experience, to learn. And what I've learned over this time with doing potlatches is watching the elders, knowing the elders, what kind of experience they had, being sent to boarding schools and that. And for them to come to me and say, oh, we're making a difference. We're not still educating kids because the kids are telling the story. That's so powerful. And that's what's changing the culture, is that the elders some of them had a really bad experience, but the kids, their kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews are telling the story that the schools are better now than when they went to school. So I think it's just educating. We all got to keep educating people. There is some biases, but I think there's, you know, yeah, that's, I'm just.
Okay, I like to hear that things are better than they were 50 years ago, and I think they're going to start getting better more quickly because I think there's so much more information. Our kids seem to be just moving. We're just trying to catch up to them in a lot of situations because they're so far ahead of us. And so I hope the kids can remember too that they're way far ahead of us, and so wait for us to catch up or educate us to catch up, which is why we do need kids on any sort of thing. So if I can summarize, because just to get to where we are, we have generally a feeling that we want more data to see where our equity problems are in our society, in our system. I'm just using the word system, and by system I'm going to mean society in general, because I think just boiling it down to one school or a district isn't big enough for what we need to accomplish. So we need more data points to see where our inequities are. I'm still going to continue to push that. I think in order to know what is an inequity, we need to know what equity is. So I still would like us to, as the board, come up with, somehow come up with an agreed upon definition. Unless we want to treat it like the Supreme Court treated kids cover your ears, pornography in the day, which was, I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it, which I think with inequity, we probably do all, we know it when we see it. We maybe can't come up with a great definition. I'm just trying to summarize here. Am I getting kind of where we are thinking we want to maybe reconstitute our equity group? Do we want to create a new commission, if you will, that incorporates student body and tribal voices and grown-ups and extra grown-ups, all of us, and have them sort of start laying out their paths and what they've gone through? I don't know. Am I getting any of this right?
I like that idea, Sarah. I also think I want to talk about Asian, Hispanic, Black, anybody else out there, that the races that we have within our community. And
absolutely.
Then, are you gonna read the question? I see there's a question answering them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I haven't read it. I used to. Well, yeah. Will the school board adopt a policy? I would hope that the policies plan. I mean, do we all agree what we want our policy to address?
I don't think we've gotten any place close to that.
No, I understand. That's just what the question was. I mean, I think overall, eventually, yeah, our policy is going to hopefully say these are the problems, how do we drill down and work on those problems? I don't see a policy as answering the problems that's a really big job for one little policy to do.
And also equity, Sarah, has much more to do than with just a racial issue. In fact, the most inequities in education are due to poverty, not race. So, I mean, you can read that. Listen, I'm an old professor. I taught a course in diversity every quarter for 14 years. I have read this literature till I can memorize it. This is not an easy task. It's not something you can write overnight. You have to know who you're writing for. And I don't think we can solve social justice issues. That's a court issue. That's a legal issue. I think we have to solve the issues just in our school system, and I think the board has to write it, nobody else. Us five gonna have to sit down and wordsmith this thing, or put something together, or some sort of maybe just an outline that we can start filling in the blanks. One of the things, Sarah, I would suggest before we do this again is that each board member write a definition of equity for you. That all five of us write down what we think we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. And then I think we ought to write down any inequities that we are aware of in the school system. Now, that's what I would suggest for our homework, or call it what you will.
Mm-hmm. And that's what this meeting is designed for, at a work session to start. But maybe this is going to be work. I mean, not maybe. This is 100% going to be work that we are going to have to do in perpetuity. This is not something that gets solved by us writing a pretty policy. This is something that's going to have to come through blood, sweat, and tears over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, in my opinion.
I would hope that we would call them success and challenges. And I also would, we have to have buy-in by the staff and the administration too. So I think that's important to remember that.
Well, they're looking to us for guidance. That's why we're writing this. We're not asking anybody else to write this. We are the ones in charge of this. We need to gather information in all the ways that the five of us know how, and bring that to the next time we sit together. If it includes going to meetings or sitting in on I don't know, do more reading about equity, I don't know. But I'm with you, Cindy. I didn't think that the Erin Jones, I liked Erin. I thought she was a very nice lady. I'd like to meet her sometime. But I don't think, as I watched the people who were participating, or my concern was not participating in all those hours that we sat through, and so many people just sat there. Some never said one word about any of it. I felt sorry for Erin, because I've been there. I'm just meaner than she is, because I would demand responses from people and she would not. But I think we wasted a lot of time there. I wish that again, Zooming for me is not a way to get this job done. I wish we could sit together and talk. I don't know how that can happen, but anyway, I agree.
So we have another comment in the chat.
Yeah, I saw that. And yes, we do. It needs to be all races. Exactly. I mean, and it needs to be all income level.
And it also has to do with gender issues and other issues. Then, we can't, this is not just a tribal versus white issue in our school district. This is, special ed and disabled people. And I mean, we've got a lot of people who don't get equal chances for a lot of different reasons. And I think the major reason is poverty.
It goes to gender inclusivity. And
right.
I mean, I can speak to that from what's changed from the year of 2014 to now. Again, kids are just light years ahead of us in so many ways. But so what I think we're feeling is, since we are going to run out of time at this point, I think I understand that this is work that is best done in person. 100% agree with that. And I hope, as shots start going in arms, I'm very hopeful that we're going to be able to all come together again to do this very important work. But I think in the interim, what can start happening is if each of us, the 5 of us, do the work and just come up with let's just start out right just at the tip of this. What is our definition of equity?
Okay.
We all do that. We can send that to Jenny. She can disseminate that back out to all of us, and we can then start collating that and start to really make the snowball.
So as we end this, I just want to give credit to Superintendent Brewer for all the work he's done for us. And I know this is not an easy, but I do appreciate the work that you did and bringing this together and bringing the committee together. And I know this is not an easy task, but thank you very much for all the work you've done for us.
Thank you, Director Kelly. Thank you, Director Kelly. Can I add a little bit, Sarah? It's been fascinating to sit back and listen. Outstanding. I think, and this is if I could have wrote the script on how I could have wrote the script. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. I got an echo going on in my ear. But this is exactly what needed to happen today. Very candid, frank conversation to start this tough work moving forward. So thank you for that. I would like to make a recommendation to the board. I think Sarah's made a request that each board member write, their definition of equity and maybe start listing out the inequities that they're aware exist in our school and community. And that could be a good starting point for our next study session. And I would like to recommend that we follow up next week, not next week, but the following week, January 28th, with another study session to continue the conversation with now data from each board member so we can start developing some common ground. So that would be my recommendation to the board. And I do want to make just one statement about Aaron Jones. Just as, this is kind of evolved in this meeting space tonight, I think it was really important, Aaron Jones didn't come to our town to fix problems. Aaron Jones doesn't know Port Angeles, like we know Port Angeles. I get that. But what I hope Aaron Jones brought to the table in her conversations, I know she did for me, is an understanding of self-awareness and awareness that, there are issues. And we, and we all, and I said this in a student recorded message about Dr. Martin Luther King, we all have implicit bias. I mean, I don't care who we are, you've got bias.
Of course.
And so until we start to, recognize that, and that was my hope, is building awareness with Aaron Jones. We all start, what is equity, and maybe how does my thinking differ from another? And so whether it hit the mark or not hit the mark, that's to each their own. But I am very appreciative for the work that she brought to our district, and hopefully there are some others that feel that as well. So with that being said, I would like to make the recommendation that we continue this conversation on January 28th at a 6 o'clock study session, and the board bring those 2 data points. What is your definition of equity, and what are your known inequities within our systems, and continue this very vibrant conversation. I thought we did well tonight. So thank you, President Methner.
Yeah, I would love if that information could get out to all of us, if all of us would send it in. And Maisie and Lake and I want to fold you all into this as well. Got to give you homework. If we could get that a few days before, so I am prepared instead of having to sit there at the beginning of a meeting and read through everyone's definition. If I could know sort of where everybody stands, would that be something we could just send that into to Jenny to disseminate, let's say on the Tuesday before or something? Does that sound appropriate, Marty?
Yeah, I would like to, if we could get it out, the next meeting is scheduled for January 28th. And so if we could coordinate that with our next board agenda, which is January 22nd, So that gives you a week and a day. Can the board agree to provide that written communication back to us so we can put it together and share it by way of the next board agenda on January 22nd? Is that agreeable?
It's good for me.
I'm good.
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're not sleeping anyway, Jacob. What else?
Yeah, Jack, you're up all night. You can be working on that computer all night long.
I got time. Why you guys want another baby show? Is that what's happening? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Baby
Why
show.
would-
baby show.
Yes, while we transition into our regular meeting, it would be wonderful if we could have a quick baby shot. Okay, so everybody, we're all good? We know what our jobs are?
Yes,
Excellent.
I know.
Cindy, you're good with it? Katie? Okay, good. Somebody talking? No? All right. I'm waiting for Jacob to
Here is
get
the
back. Oh, here he is.
There's the baby. Oh,
That's our next FTE right there.
there you go. Look, he's so
See
sweet.
this future Rough Rider?
You got it.
It'll be a few years.
He just pooped while I'm holding him.
Oh, isn't that fun? Okay, so with that, we are going to now transfer to our actual board meeting. I really appreciate everyone, our participation in that work session. While not anything was really solved, I think we have a kind of a good roadmap to go forward because this is a big issue. So I would like to welcome everyone to the Port Angeles School District meeting of January the 14th, 2021. We had an executive session earlier, which we are back from. No action was taken. We are going to, I would like, if Christian is available, for him to do our introduction to our remote board meeting.
This evening, that will be Carmen.
Carmen, great.
Hello, good evening. As the moderator of the Port Angeles School District Remote Board Meeting, I would like to welcome you to the January 14th, 2021 Board of Directors Board Meeting via Zoom. This meeting is being presented remotely for all attendees. Items to be mentioned before we begin is to note that this meeting is open to the public and is recorded. You can listen to all past board meetings by visiting Board Docs through our district website. If you have any comments that you would like shared with the Board of Directors, please email Executive Assistant to the Superintendent, Jenny Wilson, at jwilson@portangelesschools.org. There will also be a portion of the meeting reserved for community comments. According to Board Policy 1400, the community comments portion of the agenda is an opportunity for members of the audience to make statements to the board regarding non-agenda items. Agenda items will be addressed as listed in the agenda. If you wish to share comments, please use the Q&A button located at the bottom of the Zoom conference window. Submit a brief summary of your non-agenda item or the correlating agenda item number along with your name and wait to be called on. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and your mic will be enabled. Before making your comments, please state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes to speak, after which time your mic will be turned off. Video will not be enabled during your time. Accusations, foul language, other verbal abuse will not be tolerated. If you do so, you will be asked to refrain from using such language. If you continue to use inappropriate language, your mic will be turned off. If you have any concerns about individual district employees or specific complaints that require administrative response, please contact the Office of the Superintendent directly. Thank you, and back to you, Madam President.
Thank you, Carmen. So we'll move on to roll call. I believe we've all been together now for the last hour and a half. So that will move us into the flag salute. So if you would all join me, I believe. Excellent. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry about that. I had a lot of backbeat in my in my head. So hopefully that came through all right. Excellent. Now we move to Director Kelly, who will lead us in the will give us the acknowledgement of tribal lands. Director Kelly.
We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous lands of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved this treaty rights to this land, specifically the Clown tribes. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Thank you, Cindy. Moves us right along to 6.01, which is our consent agenda approval. The purpose of our consent agenda is to recognize routine matters. At the request of any board member, any item may be removed and inserted at an appropriate place on the agenda.
President Methler, I'd like to remove 6.08, approval of school district plans, to 10.9.
All right. That will be done. Jenny, you're going to move that CSIPs to 10.09. Anything else?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Okay, so, I just skipped right over agenda approval. I apologize. I was reading off of I assume the agenda looks all right to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
President Methler, I approve consent agenda as amended.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. Okay. I'm getting a little, okay. So that is going to take us then to 7.01. And we're going to hear from the Port Angeles Education.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Ray Chirayat, and I currently serve as the board president of the Port Angeles Education Association. Not the association, sorry, the foundation. So to start with, for those of you who are not familiar with the foundation, our mission is fostering support for students and programs by promoting creativity, innovation, and excellence in partnership with the Port Angeles School District. Our vision, and this kind of ties into the equity conversation you were having earlier, is that all students have full access, free of barriers, to reach their full potential. We want every child to have equal opportunities to succeed in school and in life. No child should be restricted by an inability to acquire basic needs, which allow active participation in classes and activities. So in terms of what we have done as a foundation in this last year, we have SPICE grants, which is really an acronym for Supporting Projects of Innovation, Creativity, and Excellence, also known as student and teacher grants. So we've awarded 17 grants for a total of $37,000 to provide opportunities for student success and enrichment. We have a student needs program, and so far this year we've filled 32 requests for clothing and shoes for students identified through the school counselors. We also purchased some clothing and distributed it to the Caring for Kids clothes closet. We filled 6 requests for eye exams and glasses. Incidentally, the Albert Haller Foundation is a major supporter of our Student Needs Fund. We granted $40,000 to the school district to connect low-income families with reliable broadband internet access. And we also facilitated a further $10,000 where we applied to the United Way on behalf of the school district to that very same program. We granted $1,000 to the back to school event. We have a reserve of about $6,200 for ASB cards for low-income freshmen so they can participate in after-school activities, and $5,000 to AmeriCorps. Altogether, then we have scholarships. The Education Foundation is the largest provider of scholarships to the Port Angeles School District students. So in 2020, we awarded 49 scholarships for a total of $220,625 to 41 students. In addition, there were 7 students who received scholarships totaling $44,000 for their sophomore, junior, and senior years. Altogether, since 2000, over the last 20 years, the Education Foundation has awarded over $2.2 million to over 600 students. We also have an Academic Achievement Awards program where 10 Port Angeles High School students, seniors actually, are honored for academic excellence. And what we mean by that is a 3.5 GPA every semester for the first 3 years at the high school, while taking at least 9 honors, advanced placement, or university courses. Certificates this last year were mailed to the students, and we normally have a reception, but that wasn't possible. So we'll hopefully do that in the spring. We'd also like to thank all of the district employees who donate directly to the Education Foundation through payroll deduction. As expected, I mean, this year the donations were a little lower than we normally get because of the pandemic, but we really do appreciate all the support for those who have signed up with those cash donations. We have an annual event to fundraise to celebrate public education. We had to cancel that this year, and we have not scheduled one for 2021 either. We were able to do an email and mail solicitation with several of our regular donors, which has had a fair amount of success. And we hope to plan some small events whenever possible. The other activity that we are involved in is the 50th class reunion. So the Education Foundation sponsors a breakfast at the high school for the 50th reunion class. The tour is usually, the tour is usually led by Principal Jeff Clark, who's always the superstar on that event. Unfortunately for the 1970 batch, we couldn't meet in 2020, and so we're planning to do maybe a reunion of in the next year and kind of bring both the years together, the 70 and the 71 classes. So finally, to wrap up, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all our school district liaisons at the Ed Foundation, and those include school board member Sandy Long, Superintendent Marty Brewer, and the Jefferson Elementary Principal Rhonda Crum. So with that, does anybody have any questions for me?
I don't really have any questions. I just would like to thank the Ed Foundation for the tremendous stepping up when we went into this lockdown, and it makes me get a little teary when I think of all the children who could get onto the internet because of the Ed Foundation's help. And I don't know that we can you can't put a price tag on that amazing effort. So please convey our greatest thanks for that. Well, for everything you do, but that one in particular was above and beyond.
Thank you. I will.
And if I may, I concur with that. When we were gearing up towards reopening school in early September, there was a period of about 2 weeks where we were looking at hybrid, and all of a sudden we had to pivot to distance learning. And Ray and the other, individuals of the Port Angeles Ed Foundation were phenomenal. Within, it seemed like 5 to 7 days, they stepped up to the plate and funded the most critical need that we had to carry out that work, and helping us address the broadband issue. So ultimate respect to the work that the individual or the group has done, and thank you very much for helping to bring equitable opportunities to all of the Port Angeles School District students. Thank you very much, Ray and team.
Thank you. Happy to have done it.
Okay, with that, I think I have myself together again. And so we are going to move on with our awards and recognitions to 7.02 which is our athletics and activities department report with Coach Johnson.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. The document that was filled out for you on January 18th has changed, and that's the one constant that we know moving forward with this inside this pandemic. And so WIA has updated their guidelines as of the 12th, and we're following those. The WIA calendar has been and has remained the same, and so there's no change there. The WIA COVID tracking numbers, we might as well go ahead and toss those out because we're using another system during phase 1 and phase 2 and the new matrix on that. The request to change a scheduled sport is still in play. And so as we move down to the middle of this thing, February 1 through 3/21, we're looking forward to the possibility of presenting some practices and some games for girls volleyball, girls soccer, girls swim and dive, boys and girls cross country, boys tennis may be moved. There's been a recommendation to link that with a winter season, and football is what we're looking at right now. As you scroll down, you'll see that the traditional season 1 is what we're going to call it for WIAA, and lining down from volleyball, soccer, gymnastics, etc. We're going to be changing this around. So this is a total change, and the items above it in blue is what we're going to be asking for. As far as the middle school goes, Kristen Lunt and I have been communicating about 5-week seasons, 1 week for the pre-contest practices and 2 games a week. So the possibility of 8 games if that can take place with other middle schools near us within our region. Moving down to the AD top 10 works in progress. We have a January 20 coaches training for Final Forms, that digital access platform that we'll be utilizing for the high school and the middle school for parents to register their student athletes. We've been able to use that concussion baseline test information and transfer it over to Final Form software. Nancy Hodgins has been doing an outstanding job with that remotely. Item number 3 here, arbiter scheduling. Olympic League is going to remain. In the meeting that took place today with 13 other schools, we're going to be officially continue to be the Olympic League. But through arbiter scheduling, we're also going to be able to pay our officials after the game has been recorded, and they will get a paycheck out of to their personal account. This number is going to go down by $2,000 because when this was presented at $78.40, we're only going to do volleyball, girls soccer, and pay for football officials during this season. The $78.40 represented boys and girls basketball too, so that's going to be taking place later on. Item number 4, Peninsula College. I'm happy to say that the cabinet is received my proposal, and we're waiting on approval based on some time so that we can practice on field turf and have lights if needed. Item number 5, the goalposts. I've been able to talk with Civic Field, and we do have a plan in place. We're working on that to get the new goalposts installed during this next 3 weeks. Also talking with them about Lincoln Park. I've been able to get that available for us if we're able to host a home meet at Lincoln Park. Item number 7, we are going to do a senior celebration, and again, that will be during the first home event that we host. Number 8, the regional alignment that was changing every day. And right now, I can tell you that we have 13 teams. I can tell you, and I called Marty Brewer today saying that Shelton is all in, not just only in football, but in all sports right now. And currently Bainbridge, in the conversation today, their school board and their superintendent are confirming their Metro League alignment and to see where they're going to be. I would like to call to your attention that Chimacum and Port Townsend are a combined school now for athletics. And so they will be competing at the 1A level within the sports that they will present. Item B here, these were the options that we were talking about. And until ADs had the opportunity to talk to their building principals and their admin teams, today we're going to go to a north and a south division. And the draft that was put out today was presented to Mr. Clark and to Mr. Brewer for approval. And then we're going to get back together at our next AD meeting on the 19th to roll that out once presented for a scheduled adoption. Port Townsend and Chimacum, like I said, they have confirmed joining the league. Item B here is Peninsula and Gig Harbor are not. They were very gracious. They said thank you because they have nowhere to go, and yet they have found another league to join. South Kitsap, on the other hand, they are in because of travel. This is item number 10, what Mr. Brewer told us last week. Okay, beginning on Monday, this is what we're going to do. And that has all changed. This has been updated again on the WIAA site on the 12th. And so we will follow the guidelines inside of phase number 1 moving forward. And through that, we can find that information on the WIAA website. So moving forward, the low risk sports across the board would be cross country, golf, gymnastics, tennis, track and field, cheerleading, that is on the sideline, no contact, dance, swim and dive. Our moderate risk sports now are going to be baseball, bowling, soccer, softball, and volleyball. The high risk sports will remain the same with basketball, football, wrestling, cheerleading with contact. And the one piece that I had sent to Mr. Brewer for review is a possibility of adding girls bowling. And I'm excited about that for girls' opportunities for our Title IX piece. So I would like to say right now, girls soccer is a moderate risk and they practiced indoors. Right now, the occupancy rate is 500 square feet per person. And they were in pods of 6 tonight with a buffer zone. And they would have brief contact, close contact were permitted. So with that, does anybody have any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So I was wondering, so football is considered a high-risk sport, correct?
Yes.
So I remember previously that it wasn't in the first season because of its high risk. Why has that changed?
2 reasons. Number one, we're going to be outdoors. And the second reason is the mask. Okay. When we have said that, can we just wear masks across the board? WIAA, the health department, Mr. Brewer advocated very hard for that to take place. And for that, we are most gracious. We've talked about a face mask underneath their regular face mask, but also what they call a splash shield. And, you know, Coach Washi and I, we're going back and forth on that, trying to figure out what is legal. And I'm waiting on a designation from WIAA on that. So that can take place. But with social distancing, and if we're in phase 2, there's a good possibility that can take place.
Okay. And one more question. So regarding gymnastics,
Yes.
because it is low risk, I remember watching it on WIAA and it was in the first season. I'm just wondering why you think that it got moved.
Part of the reason why it got moved is they wanted to link it traditionally with that regular season, the winter season. And we will find out on the 19th where that's going to land. The WIAA executive board is meeting on that date because of the seasonal change. So we don't know if it's going to be in the season 2 or seasons 3 slot, but there will be a 7-week season.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
So if I'm reading this right, we are going to just go ahead with sports starting on the 1st of February.
1st of February is the plan today.
But some teams are already practicing?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so it starts at 2-1. But so girls swim and dive aren't practicing yet, but girls soccer is practicing.
Yes, they presented a proposal to Mr. Brewer and myself.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a continuation of that summer 3.0 session.
Okay. Okay. I am just ready for sports. And has there been any further, I'm sorry to go off on this, but is there been any more conversation around the girls soccer team or the boys football team being an outdoor sport, allowing people to watch, or is that still a no?
When we get to phase 2, yes. The competitions will allow no tournaments, okay, but we can do a competition itself, okay? So a competition meaning an invitational. That's not going to take place. But venues at 25% capacity or 200 individuals, whichever is less, okay? And so that includes both teams, coaches, staff members, okay? And then parents that can get in. They've got to cap it at 200 for that.
Thank you.
All right.
And so I want to reemphasize that that's including the participants, the coaches, the officials. So capacity or attendance to in-person events is going to be minimal from, parents and community. But we'll problem solve that and work at options with, we've already got some options around YouTube and watching, our athletic events. We'll partner with Patrick and his team to continue that. But it's going to be difficult, a difficult sell, because there's not going to be a lot of people at these events with 200 as the capacity.
For sure. But I do love the idea of integrating with our audiovisual. I can't come with the right name right now. Getting out there and getting that experience of videotaping these things and having people able to watch. I think that's something that I would like to see continue in perpetuity, because there are grandparents in, Kenosha who might want to watch Maisie do her gymnastics.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, that would be something that I think we would like to invest in and would give our students some real opportunities there to learn that business, if you will. Anyway, okay. That is all I have.
All right. Are there any other questions? All right. Hearing none. Thank you very much.
May I add, this is quite an evolving situation with regards to WIAA. So I want to just thank Dwayne for staying on top of it. I try to keep up with it, and I simply can't. There's just so many moving parts. So thank you very much, Dwayne, for staying out ahead of this. And it's really important that we give our student athletes an opportunity to hit the field, the courts, the gym, whatever it might be. So thank you for your commitment, and I know we're in good hands.
Terrific. So if there's nothing further, we'll move on to 7.03, which is the School Board Recognition Month. Yay us. I don't know.
Yay, us.
Yes, and so for those in the room this evening, this is a School Board Appreciation Month as a proclamation by Governor Jay Inslee, recognizing school boards across the state. As we all know, in this room, we have an outstanding school board that puts in a lot of time, effort, and dedication to the job, as you see and witness this evening. I want to officially thank our board for that. And Macy is going to read the proclamation to be adopted by the board. Thank you.
Whereas the mission of Washington's public school system is to assure that all students achieve at high levels and possess the knowledge and skills to be responsible citizens of a democratic society who enjoy productive and satisfying lives, and whereas Washington's 295 locally elected school boards and 9 elected educational service district boards are the core of the public education governance system in our state, and whereas the districts and regions they lead serve more than 1 million students, have a combined annual budget of over $15 billion, and employ approximately 120,000 people, and whereas school directors play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards of accountability for all involved, and whereas school directors are directly accountable to the citizens in their districts and regions, serving as a vital link between members of the community and their schools, and whereas school directors and educational service districts provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of school children, and whereas it is appropriate to recognize school directors as outstanding volunteers and champions for public education. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim January 2021 as School Board Recognition Month in Washington, and I encourage all people in our state to join me in this special observance. Signed this 6th day of January 2021, Governor Jay Inslee.
Thank you very much, Maisie. And so once again, thank you very much to our board. We do have a certificate for each board member, and at the next board meeting, we have a nice gift that we'll present to each board member. So on behalf of the entire community and our school district, thank you very much to each of you for your commitment in serving your community.
Well, thank you. You never know what to say after you. Okay, we'll go on then. We're just going to keep on with our board correspondence, which is 8.01. And Jenny, do we have any correspondence?
Okay, the only correspondence will be the certificates from Wasda, and also you have a letter on Friday notes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Which takes us now to 9.01, which is our November financial report. Kira Acker.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Hello.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, nope, I can't. Can you enable my screen?
Kira, I'll share it.
Okay.
Do you feel you should do a musical interlude, Kira?
Yeah, I don't know that you want me to do that, though.
Here we go.
Okay. So here we are in November already. Here you can see with the capital or our general fund and capital projects, not too much activity in capital projects this last month, but we are 24% of the way through budget in both revenues and expenditures in the general fund, with a total 12.9 in revenues and 13.2 in expenditures for the year. Next page. Here are the three other funds. We have our debt service, of course, that we're just accruing interest there, and ASB. Haven't had too many fundraisers going on, and then but we still have our normal expenditures for the year. So not all of them. You can see last year at this time we were at 59,000 in expenditures, and this year we're only at 20. So there has been a lot of reduce in both revenues and expenditures, of course, in ASB. Next slide. And here we are, just broken out by program. Expenditures for the current month in November, and then also year to date on the top, and then down below our expenses broken out by object and the percentage of percentage to budget, which there you can see we're at 24% for both. Next slide. So breaking this out by expenditure other than compensation, you can see we're down quite a bit from last year. Overall, we've reduced our expenses from an average of 4.4 for the year, or a month, 4.4 for the month, down to 4.2 per month. So we really have worked hard at getting those expenditures down. And it's a total of 600,000 just in expenditures other than compensation. So everyone's done an amazing job just cutting back as much as they can and saving where they can. Next slide. Here for expenditures for salaries and benefits, again, we've cut 1.8 million in labor and salary and benefits, and that was just, you know, like we've talked about through attrition, just really making sure keep our staffing down as much as we can, and that's been a total of 1.8, which is here it's 162,000 less than last year in November. So you can see that starting to kind of accumulate there. Next slide. And here's a breakdown of the general fund with our revenues up on the top. We received about 78,000 more in local taxes all at once in November. Usually they trickle in over the few months after October, but I was projecting 200,000 there, but we got 278,000 all at once. So that was good. That means people are paying their property taxes out there. And then just going down, looking down into our ending fund balance of that 4.4 from where we began at 4.7. So, you know, actually, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you can kind of see that projection moving forward. Next month in January, we're going to, the apportionment will catch up with the enrollment. So we haven't seen the revenues change for our enrollment, and the apportionment comes in the same as budget. And then in January, it all catches up with our enrollment. And as you know, our enrollment is down, or still down 200 FTEs, so from budget. So they average that out for us. And then we start receiving payments based on what our average will be for the year. So that is included in these projections. So you won't see any other dips or surprises with that. But this year, or this month, you can see we're there at 4.4, and we'll continue to decrease and then go back up in April. And this is all based on the apportionment and how that's spread out over the remaining months from OSPI. So still projecting there about 3.7, ending 3.7 fund balance. If everything stays as is, hoping to receive that hold harmless from transportation, which is an additional around $800,000, which would really help keep that fund balance up. That would give us an extra boost there and put us up over the 4 million in our ending fund balance. So, and that's that. It's pretty quiet this month. Next month we'll catch you up on January enrollment and December financials, or next month at our next meeting. So this month with our 2 meetings, it was a little different on how we've spaced out the reports. So does anyone have any questions for me?
No, it looks good to me.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you next
Thank
time.
I missed that last thing. Okay. All right. So we are moving right along to our discussion and action items. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Nope. Okay. So we're at 10.01, which is the approval of the second reading of policy 310, enrollment.
Director Kelly moves the action.
I second.
I have a motion by Cindy, a second by Sandy. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. That passes. We go to 10.02, approval of the second reading of policy 3143, district notification of juvenile offenders, changing to, let me see, dissemination of information about student offenses and notification of threats of violence or harm.
I move the policy.
Director Wright seconds.
Okay. Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. 10.03 is approval of the second reading of policy 3122, excused and unexcused absences.
Director Kelly moves the action.
Director Wright.
Director Marks seconds.
Okay. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Aye.
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 Abstentions? All right. 10.04 is the approval of second reading of policy 5520, staff development.
Director Wright will move to approve this motion.
Director Marks will second.
All right, first and second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All right. I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, passes. Excuse me. Then we go to 10.05, which is the second reading of policy 4300. Political relationships with governmental agencies is changing to limiting immigration enforcement in schools.
Director Kelly moves the recommendation.
Director Wright seconds.
Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds unanimous to me. So we will move on to 10.06, which is the approval of the first reading of policy 3211, gender inclusive schools.
Director Wright will move to approve policy 3211.
Director Marks will second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Do we have any discussion?
I just was noticing when I read it that we should be mindful of it when we're looking at the equity, drafting the equity policy. So.
Excellent. Any other comments? All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Again, unanimous. Thank you. So we're going to go to 10.07, which is the approval of WASDA's recommendation to retire policies 3144, the release of information concerning student sexual and kidnapping offenders, and 4314, notification of threats of violence or harm.
Director Kelly makes a motion to approve this recommendation.
Director Long seconds.
Okay, is there any discussion? None? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, good. I didn't hear everyone. All right, excellent. So that takes us to 10.08, approval of secondary in-person learning plan. It's going to be presented to us by Marty.
All right, thank you very much, President Method. We have a number of individuals out this evening that participated in our secondary team to create the plan that we'll present to you this evening. And so I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Michelle Olson to start that presentation. Before I do, I want to remind those that are in the room, if you have comments on agenda items or non-agenda items, please put that into your Q&A tab down below so that we can put you in line to respond to any item that you would like to speak to this evening. So with that being said, Michelle.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having us here tonight. And I have a team with me, not our entire team here, but representatives of our team to share this plan with you. If we can go on to the next slide, Jenny. So with our team, there were 20 of us and comprised of both high school and middle school staff, both classified and certificated staff, along with our secondary admin. And so this group was charged with coming up with the hybrid plan. We met virtually, right, which is always tricky. But with this group, even with 20 people, they made it look easy. Our discussions went very smoothly, questions, answers, sharing diverse opinions and ideas. I couldn't have asked for a better group, so I appreciate each and every one of them. Again, our work is supporting the original plan that was put out in August and approved by the board. And so if we go back in time and think of the work that we did in the month of June, and that recommendation we put forward, we had spent a lot of time in that community group talking about when we were able to get to in-person learning, what would that look like? So that was kind of our foundation, but then we really had to get into, given all that we know, all that's transpired, what is the reality? What is that going to look like? And that was a big undertaking. So with lots of discussions, the piece that was just incredible, and it doesn't always happen with teams, is that every single point on the recommendation and the rationale, our team 100% agreed. I mean, if we had questions, we would discuss it, but for every point, the entire team was in agreement. So that we feel confident in that we're representing people who were not necessarily in the group, and we're excited to share that with you tonight. We also know that part of our charge was that whatever we created did need to be submitted to Dr. Unthink for her approval, and she has approved our plan, and so we are bringing it here to you tonight. The next slide. So some people might be like, why bring secondary back? You know, they're doing remote learning. Why don't we keep doing that? Or why are you changing? Well, let's be clear on our reasons why, because this guides our work and our sense of urgency. Our students need school. We've heard that loud and clear. We've heard it from our student reps here on the board. We've heard it from our students when they're in Google Meets. We've heard it from students in their student survey. We've seen it as we look across at different grades. School is central to our community, to our families, and to our students. Their social emotional needs are not being met in the way that they should, and we know that again from our surveys and from talking to our students and our own children, our personal children. We need to support them. Our students, right, thrive on structure and consistency, as we all do, and so without that, students are struggling, and school can provide that. We want to provide, you know, an opportunity for them to safely connect with peers. So when they're coming back to school, you know, the health and safety guidelines are being followed, and they're going to get an opportunity to interact with friends and peers. Those connections with caring adults, that matters. We want every student, in addition to their family, to have someone at school that is acknowledging them and caring about them and making sure that they're connected and doing okay. And we know that some of our students are struggling with connection and needing more of that with us. We also know that given the new guidelines from the state with the matrix and the reopening of schools model, that we, with our numbers in our community, with our health and safety practices that we can document that are in place, we are ready to go to the next level and bring our secondary back. Those health and safety practices, we have had our work confirmed. We've had an L&I inspection where we had no violations and everything was found to be compliant. That's incredible, and again speaks to the incredible teamwork of all the different groups of our staff working. And most importantly, too, we've proven that as a district and as a community that we can make this work for kindergarten and 6th grade. So we have that time invested, we have the success, and we are using it as a foundation and a guide as we are planning to bring back our secondary. So there is no doubt that our students need us, we need them, and that we're ready to bring them back. So it's exciting times. As we go to the next slide, I want to introduce Dana Snell. She is a counselor at the high school, and she was an integral part of our team. And she's going to speak to the dates that we have here and our rationale for choosing the configurations and the timing that we did. So Dana?
So good evening. When we talked about bringing the students back and all the planning that took place there. One of the things that was really important to us is honoring the transitions that students have, particularly high school, the importance of transitions for the 9th graders as well as the 12th graders. And so we looked at February 2nd at the high school level and bringing back the 9th and 12th graders for that reason. We know that welcoming 9th graders to the campus and starting their high school career is incredibly important, and celebrating the seniors and ushering them on to their post-high school is incredibly important also. And so the most time that we can have with them is what we want. And also along with the 7th grade at the middle school level, and giving them as much opportunity with in-person learning as possible. Over the last, probably 5 months now, at the high school level, we have had probably close to 100 in-person meetings with students and their families, students that maybe have been struggling academically or with attendance. We've brought those students and their families in. The high school counseling team, as well as the admin team, and Janet Parker. And overwhelmingly, the students and parents were just so happy and relieved when we said, come on campus, go to tutoring, come into our library. We've got room for you. We've got time for you. And so to extend that to all of the 9th grade and all of the 12th grade on the high school campus is really exciting. And so that's what we're looking forward to on February 2nd, as well as obviously the 7th grade at Stevens Middle School is looking forward to that too. Any questions about what I've said or what I haven't said?
All right, thanks, Dana. So moving on to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about the hybrid schedule that we have created and we'll be sharing with you. Our focus is absolutely on the health and safety of our students and staff. And so again, we have overall created district processes and procedures to meet the requirements of the Department of Health and L&I. And each and every school has created a health and safety plan that talks about every aspect of health and safety. Right now, our elementary plans are on the website and can be looked at and shared. We will be posting the secondary plans tomorrow on the website. Again, these are documents that are work in progress, meaning that they are right now as current as today and based on all of the current guidelines. And so what we do know is that as guidelines change, as conditions in our community change, that we're going to need to be responsive, and those plans will be adjusted. So they are, again, a work in progress. In those plans, we talk about everything from how are we accessing PPE, what does it look like when students are arriving on campus, how are we handling attestations by our students, by our staff, what does it look like when we're transitioning between classes, what does it look like for PE, for music, what does it look like if a student develops symptoms or isn't feeling well. Every aspect is included there right now that we can think of and that we've cross-referenced. Will we probably add more? Absolutely. Key to our plan, and this again we can't say enough to the community and to our families, is number one, if a student is not feeling well, they stay home, right? That's our first line of defense. So not feeling well, you're staying home. Secondly, as you arrive on campus, everyone is wearing a mask, and we're practicing the 6 feet social distancing everywhere, all the time. We also know that our cohorts need to be as small as possible. Now, we've had practice at the elementary with cohorting, and at elementary it looks a little bit different, right? Because you have the classrooms, and we've been keeping them cohorted throughout their entire day, and really being careful with their schedule. So we've learned a lot from that. As we gave our plan to Dr. Unthank, one of the things that she was looking at and wanting to double check was what was our plan for cohorting. Because at high school, again, what's a little bit different is we have, they have different classes. So our plan does take that into account, and our schedule certainly takes that into account, which we'll go over here in just a little bit. Everybody attestation and temperature checks will be done at the first class. So the admin team at every building has spent hours putting together a plan for their school site to make sure that we're confirming with students and parents that children are not coming to school with symptoms. And then we have processes in place if we don't have that information. And again, we have these processes in place at elementary. We've learned a lot, we've refined them, and we're sharing that expertise with the secondary. You'll see in our schedule here that we have chosen to do 2 80-minute periods each day. Right now we know that our students have 4 periods. They have the advisory and then periods 1, 2, and 3. So we'll be going over here in just a minute, our schedule, to give you more information on that. So who would think that I would be sharing the positives of our high school campus being older and spread out over these many acres? But yes, it's true, that's a positive for us right now in 2021, in that our transitions between cohorts and classes, right, mostly will be taking place outside. So yes, there's the 100 and the 400 building where the hallways are there, and we'll be having those marked for left and right and walking on that side. But we really are thankful that our buildings are separated right now, because that is going to, again, just help with our health and safety practices. We will not be having students have lunch or breakfast at school. So that is a time, right, that has a higher probability of, students, they don't want to have their masks on and all those kinds of things. So we want to minimize the potential. And so we'll be making sure that we're sending home lunch and breakfast with our students, and we'll continue to partner with Sodexo on meeting families' needs as those come up. Next slide. So Lillian Cohn is here. I'm assistant principal at the high school, and she's going to take you through a little bit more of our schedule. Lillian?
Hello, everyone. As we discussed this on the team and thought of the challenges of delivering high school curriculum, we realized that the remote asynchronous lessons had to still be the foundation of our teaching and learning. Our students, to keep the cohort really small, will have 2 periods a day. So they'll meet 1 time a week with each teacher, 2 days a week to see all 4 teachers. And to honor the fact that they can't learn in a part-time schedule what they need to learn to be able to move on to the next classes, we've all decided that asynchronous learning will still be the foundation, but that being in school and being together and learning as a community will be the enrichment that we can bring as we bring students back to school. So we will have an A cohort and a B cohort. They'll come to school 2 days a week, Monday and Thursday, Tuesday and Friday. They will have afternoon Google Meets. We will still be offering tutoring on Wednesdays and after school and on off days. During the 80 minutes of class activity, we envision teachers having discussions, reviewing the remote learning, working with small groups, working on shop classes, on hands-on projects, and science classes on labs. We'll be emphasizing social and emotional connections. We'll be able to differentiate and sometimes have students in small groups in the building after school or in the afternoons. We'll ask them to stay. We'll focus still on tutoring and enrichment and supporting, allowing students to ask questions and get answers for the work that they're seeing in their Google Classrooms. And the Google Classroom will still be the main method of new learning and teaching. This is a pretty incredibly complex undertaking for the staff. You can imagine that in a normal high school schedule, we have over 60 teachers, each teaching 6 periods a day, and in normal times, 1,000 students. And in general, no 2 students have the same schedule. So trying to put this together and in a normal year is challenging. And now with an AB cohort overlaid with 4 short terms, it is incredibly complex, and it has taken innumerable hours of the counseling staff and the admin staff and the whole building to put together AB cohorts that will work for the 2 terms that we have remaining. It is based on family choice. Mail was sent home, snail mail was sent home to every family. So in 95% of the cases, we were able to honor the first choice of students and families' choice of being on the A cohort or the B cohort. And now, though, it's going to be really, really difficult to even make small changes to those choices and to those classes. So if those need to be made, we'll put in a process, and it'll take a few hours to analyze every change. That's how complicated it's gotten, but we'll have a process in place. So a lot of work, but I think we're all looking forward to the fruits of that labor.
All right, thank you, Lillian. And this is probably a good spot for me to add a little bit more information. So as you have heard, right now we're in full remote learning for our secondary, and our proposal is that we are going to a hybrid AB, where that means we're bringing students back in person in these 2 different groups, but we are also continuing our remote learning times. So what I want to make sure that the board and our families and our community also hear is that we do recognize that there are families that may have medical concerns or issues that are facing their family, and it may not be an option for you to send your child to school. We understand that. We also understand that there's different family circumstances out there with employment and childcare and all of those different pieces. And so what I want you to hear tonight is that if you are a family that needs their child to remain in remote learning, we want to work with you to make that work. So if that is something that you are wanting to do, the hybrid is not going to meet your family's needs, I would ask that each family reach out to the building principal. They have a process, a form that you can fill out, and they will work with you to create a plan to support your child's learning. So part of our commitment from back in March is to have students at the center of our planning and to look at all of our plans with a lens of equity. And equity is about giving students and families what they need, and we know that not everyone needs the same thing. So again, as you have questions about that, I would encourage each family to please contact their building principal. Moving on, we want to give you a look at our schedule by building as of today. So again, this is taking our best knowledge, all of our best thinking from our hybrid team. In addition, every building admin has been going back and forth with their building level teams, grade level teams, site teams, department teams. I couldn't be more proud of our school district and our teams, because everybody is just all in and everyone has good ideas. And it's just incredible. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and start with the high school, and then we'll go to Lincoln and Stevens, and then the CTE program. And each building principal have an opportunity to kind of walk you through the student day and their schedule, but also the teacher schedule as well. And know as well that other teams that are meeting include the admin with the Teachers Association, and we're really working very closely to make sure that we're meeting everyone's needs. So let's go ahead and start off with Jeff Clark talking about the high school.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us talk about our plan for bringing students back. We're really looking forward to seeing their faces. We've had quite a few students coming in for tutoring and academic support already, but we know that families and students are anxious to get back to school, and we're anxious to see them back. So you can see the schedule there. What we did was we used the current schedule that we're using for remote learning, and then as our starting point, and then just modified it to meet the requirements for cohorting and splitting the students into the A-B cohorts. So much is similar to the current schedule, and we have on the display you have there, we have the schedule that how it looks to teachers, and then we have how the schedule looks to a student in cohort A and separately a student in cohort B. On Mondays, this term, we have periods 4, 5, 6, and 7 for term 2. So we're starting our hybrid in term 3. So we're going back to having advisory in periods 1, 2, and 3. So on Mondays will be the A cohort day, and students will start off their day at 8:45, which is a little bit of a relief compared to pre-COVID when students had to be in their first period class bright and early at 7:40 or 7:45, so they get an hour more sleep. So the periods for advisory is 8:45 to 10:05. We have a 10-minute passing period in between. That gives the teachers time to disinfect the hard surfaces in their classroom with a spray bottle and a rag going around. And then we have period 1 for cohort A from 10:15 to 11:35. And then we dismiss the students to pick up their grab-and-go lunch and go home. From 12 to 1, they can eat lunch. And then in the afternoon, we have scheduled activities. And we are different from the middle school. The middle school is having mandatory Google Meets in the afternoons, and we have an option for teachers to have Google Meets, but because of the specialized nature of the classes at the high school, it doesn't make sense to have required Google Meets because, for example, Tim Branham in the wood shop, having another Google Meet with his students may not be the best use of his time. He can use that time to bring students in and work on hands-on projects instead of sitting in front of a computer screen. So we wanted to have maximum flexibility in that way. So that's the basic layout. 2 periods, first from starting at 8:45, students dismissing at 11:35. Advisory in first period on Monday for cohort A, advisory in first period for cohort B on Tuesday. Wednesday remains a day that students aren't in school, and the bulk of the bargained planning time for teachers takes place on Wednesday, but the students are still having their remote learning work in Google Classroom to work on and assignments. As Michelle mentioned, remote learning remains the foundation of teaching and learning. And the in-person face-to-face time at school is going to be for ability for teachers to build relationships with their students, review academic support, discussion of lessons that have taken place remotely in Google Classroom, that kind of check-in support. And then on Thursday, you go back to the same cycle with A cohort there for periods 2 and 3. And then on Friday, the B cohort comes back for periods 2 and 3. One thing we talked about is that, I guess you could call it a worry, that on the day that students come to school in person, when they are dismissed at 11:35, they might think, oh, I'm done for the day. But because remote learning remains the foundation, there's still an expectation that after they go home, have lunch, that they'll have some work to do for the remainder of the school day. It doesn't end then. What we're going to do is communicate the expectations up front, and I'm drafting separate letters for the A cohort and the B cohort that are just going to be packed with a lot of information about how this is going to work, because it's very complex. There's a lot of details, and we're going to communicate clear expectations, because we know that we can bring the students back safely to school if we have the safety protocols in place, but the only way it works is if we are able to follow those safety protocols. And students value being back in school, which I think they do in person with their teachers. We're all going to have to work together to make sure that we follow those safety protocols and make it work.
All right, thank you, Jeff. If we can bring up the Lincoln's high school schedule and Mace.
All right, good evening. So Jenny, if you could scroll up to the student schedule, we'll start there. Lincoln's in a unique spot because we have such a small population and we have enough room that we're able to have our kids on campus in the afternoons for what we're calling learning support sessions, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So there's no A-B rotation. Lincoln's been using the Edgenuity program to deliver its remote instruction, and we'll be continuing with that program as we make this shift. So we won't have periods like we would in a typical school year. We'll have the students will go to one classroom each day and be there from 12:30 to 3. Of course, they can take breaks, and if they need to ask questions, can move around. But for the most part, we've been able to eliminate those transition periods. The mornings are still going to be open in a reduced capacity because most of our teachers are part-time with Seaview and other buildings. So we do have space, and we do have staff to be able to have smaller groups come in for that additional support. If you want to scroll up, Jenny, to the teacher schedule. And again, this just illustrates the mornings for most of our teachers are spent with their Seaview students. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mace. We can bring up the Stevens schedule and Kristen.
Hi. So I think that Mr. Clark might have covered everything I needed to, which was fantastic. So thank you. For Stevens, our schedule reflects the high school schedule as well. The main difference that we have is we are doing a required Google Meet in the afternoon. Like Mr. Clark said, we don't have as many of the specialty classes as the high school does. And what we know about the middle schoolers is they need that social connection. And bringing them in the building is going to be very helpful for that, but also having that extra Google Meet in the afternoon gives them that one more time to just connect with their classmates and connect with their teacher and get that extra support that they might need. So just like the high school, we'll be doing 2 periods during the day. Same schedule, advisory in period 1, and then period 2 and period 3. They will take a lunch with them, and within that lunch should be a breakfast as well, so they have food at home. And then for some of our kids, they might have a long bus ride home, so we made sure that we gave some time between lunch and the Google Meet, so they had time to get home, get a snack again if they need to, get themselves settled, and then log into their Google Meet for the afternoon. There you go, and that is the student schedule for Cohort A and for the Cohort B. In the afternoons, we will also have tutoring available, and we'll also have tutoring available on Wednesdays anytime students need to come in and get some extra support.
All right, thanks, Kristen.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Lisa Jocelyn is here, and she's gonna give us a little bit of an overview and glimpse into the CTE classes and what they've been doing and how that's been going and where they see things headed here as students come back. Lisa?
Well, thank you to Jeff and Lily and Kristen for explaining all the schedules and everything, because I don't have a whole lot to say because they covered it all in the schedules. But what I do want to point out that, of course, you're all aware that the CTE students have already been coming back as well as other students since September. So I like to tease the CTE staff to say that they're the experienced staff with COVID. And so they have already been implementing the students in the shops with hands-on learning, following all the safety protocols and procedures. But I will say they're very excited about the hybrid schedule and being able to have the flexibility in the afternoons to bring more kids in to be able to have, to be able to provide more hands-on learning, because they have spent so many hours going through their frameworks and their standards and trying to figure out and prioritize what they can maybe really focus on so the students meet all of the objectives in the framework. But right now what they're trying to do is maximize that in-person time so the students can get as much in-person learning as possible. So they're looking at what instruction, what type of demonstrations can be moved to remote learning. They have normally in a normal year, I should say, the safety tests would be done as they were introducing a new unit. They've moved a lot of those safety tests to the remote learning. So when those kids come back in the hybrid schedule, they've passed those safety tests, they'll be able to go right into the shops and begin working on some of the projects. Just like everybody at the staff, or everybody in all of the schools, staff has been working really hard to maximize that classroom space for students. For the shop teachers, it's a little bit difficult because they have the classroom and they have the shop. And so like most staff members, they're going to have a seating chart for the classroom, but they're also going to have it for the shop areas or the labs or any practice areas. So at any given day, at any given time, we'll know what students were where. I'd also like to mention that I keep calling them, or I keep telling staff that they could add designer to their resume, because I think staff and admin at all schools have been working really hard to try to maximize that student space. And I walked into the T&I classes one day and they had diagrams out and tape measures. They even had pieces of paper on the floor, and they had some drawings on a computer screen trying to figure out as much space as they could get so they could get some more students in there. But Dan Helpenstell even removed his office. He took down the walls in his office so he could have more space for students. So I think I would just like to acknowledge that I think across the district, staff members are doing that. We've had to remove furniture, non-essential furniture, bring more tables in, because we just want to get as many students in the classroom safely as possible. And so that's just not what CTE staff's been doing. Of course, everybody's been doing that. Trying to think, look at my notes. Oh, a couple other things that we had to do, of course, is we had to spend some money and buy some additional equipment, such as welding helmets, some saws, some other tools, because we want to make sure that they're not sharing equipment. One of the things that they're really excited about, like I said, is the flexibility in that schedule, because you know, in a lot of classes, you can check out a book and you can check out a laptop, but you can't send a welder or lathe home with a student. And so it's really important to get these students in the classroom so they can get some hands-on learning. And so this hybrid schedule, I think, is going to provide an opportunity for us to do that. And before I turn it back over to Michelle, I just wanted to share a couple of emails that I had from staff members. I asked them what they thought about reopening and what they've heard from kids. And the first one, I'm just going to read it. It says, my students have said that they love being on campus and having the opportunity to work in the store and learn new skills. It's exciting for us to deliver coffees, so now you know who it is, and see teachers every day, and we cannot wait to get back in the building. The staff member also mentioned that they have heard from several parents about how important it has been for their child to come back to school and have a purpose in their day. And the second email, and they're short, this is my last one. Reopening will help our program stay relevant. Kids can start to get the full NJROTC experience, and most importantly, we can reestablish our fundamental principles that we were unable to complete in an online format. Principles such as wearing the uniform, which instills pride and personal self-discipline. I think it is positive for students and teachers' mental health and overall well-being to reopen the school. So I'm going to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to all of our secondary admin for sharing the schedule and going over that. We can go to the next slide. So again, as you're seeing, there are so many moving pieces when you are creating a plan of this magnitude. And so as we continue to learn more, we're fine-tuning things. So as I started this presentation with, I'm going to go back and end with talking about the health and safety plans, because these are key for us bringing back our students and continuing to have our schools remain open. So again, each site has a health and safety plan with detailed practices and procedures, as I talked about earlier. The secondary plans will be posted tomorrow. And again, as you can imagine, we're a couple of weeks out, so those documents are going to continue to change, but it will give everyone an opportunity to see right now what we have in place. Also, I want to share that at every school in our district, across the district, we have a COVID school team, and that team is made up of a variety of staff, and they are meeting on a regular basis to review the plan, answer questions from staff, to hear ideas that staff might have. And then we have a Port Angeles School District team that's led by Nolan Deuce, our maintenance director, and by Marty Brewer, our superintendent. And they're meeting with the COVID site coordinators, which in most instances, right, is our head custodian. And they're making sure that district-wide we're ensuring processes, procedures, and consistency. Consistency is the word, and we want to make sure that we're following the exact protocols that we need to, and if there are needs or questions or situations that arise, we want to address them in a timely way. So again, health and safety is at the core. I have to tell you that, I interact during the week with lots of people from other districts and just people that are curious. And what I've heard in the last 2 weeks is that when they start to hear about our plan, some of them are like, how are you guys doing that? Like, that isn't even typical, or that's not usual. What other districts are doing that? And you know what? We're not typical, and we're not the usual district. Port Angeles is unique, and one of the things that is unique about us is our ability to collaborate and work as a team. And all of our teams have demonstrated from that very first Friday night in March, where we came together and Marty brought us together to say, okay, here we go. This is hard work. We were not sure where we're headed, but we're going to work together and figure it out. That intentionality and that collaboration and that willingness to get into the details has continued since then. Hundreds of hours of conversation, of asking questions, of sharing ideas, and that's unique to Port Angeles. So I'm honored, I'm excited to present this plan to you. I think that we are a model for other districts, not only around the state, but across the country, that we're showing by example that if you have a plan, if your focus is on health and safety, and you're working collaboratively, you can figure it out. And so thank you for letting us share tonight, and we are open to your questions and our comments.
Thank you, Michelle and team. Outstanding. Carmen, I think we have one question that came up in the Q&A, and Jeff Clark wants to answer that live. Go ahead.
Find the button here. The answer is depends. Depends on the size of the classroom and the space, but generally 15 or fewer is the class, will be the class size.
Thank you, Jeff. Carmen, any other comments for before the board considers?
Not at this time.
Thank you. All right, turn it back over to you, President Method.
Okay, I'm going to open to the board. Any questions from the board?
So Jeff, I have a question. So you said that the kids will leave for lunch and then they'll come back, correct?
No, I said they'll leave and go home, but they won't be done for the day. They'll come back to remote learning in the afternoon. So those are teacher-directed activities, and we scheduled them in the afternoon. What we did was we reserved a slot for each of the 4 classes, and we put them opposite of the day that they meet in person. So if they meet with their second period teacher on Monday, we put second period on Thursday. And we decided to label them teacher-directed activities to reflect that the teacher has the flexibility to have a Google Meet at that time. And if it's there after lunch day, then no other teacher can schedule a Google Meet at that time. But the teacher is not required to hold a Google Meet if it makes more sense for them to, for example, have the students stay on campus and work in the wood shop or one of the hands-on CTE courses. But no, they won't come back in the afternoon, but their day is not done when they go home just because they met in person for 2 periods in the morning.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Anyone else?
President Methner, there is another question. Are we still taking questions at this time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So it is from Rich DeCow, and I will go ahead and unmute you, Rich, in just one moment. Request to Rich has been sent. So you'll need to unmute yourself. You are now unmuted, Rich. You have 3 minutes. And we cannot hear you. I don't know if you need to turn up or make your microphone accessible. Okay, I will read Rich's question. How many teachers have been vaccinated at this point?
At this point in time, school staff, we've had school nurses receive vaccination. Some secretaries have received a vaccination. We have custodians that clean the sick room have received vaccinations. We received notice that medical licensed personnel like school psychs, SLPs, OTPTs can now be vaccinated, and those over the age of 70 can be vaccinated. That's what we have to date.
So when you know that the pieces, they're good, they're underrated.
Right, no other questions at this time.
Okay, I have a question, I think for Kristen. Am I reading that there's a 3-minute passing time for, I don't know.
Hold on just a minute. Hold on. Carmen, can you mute the mic? Thank you.
Okay. So Kristen, did you hear my question or do I need to repeat it?
Can you repeat it, please?
Okay, it looked like you have just 3 minutes for passing in between your first and second classes every day. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely accurate. Yeah, our building's not that big. We are only going to have half the amount of students in the building. And if you've been in the middle school during passing time, they just mess around.
Right,
So,
right. I get that.
They have 80-minute classes, so we'll make sure that students have the opportunity to use the restroom during the 80-minute classes. And we will just kind of guide them into their next class because we just want to reduce the amount of,
Yes.
and then hanging out with each other.
In terms of cleaning the rooms between, what's that going to look like?
Yeah, it's going to be the same thing as the high school, except that our teachers are going to, because we have such small classrooms, they are going to kind of have the students stand up, gather their belongings, stand near the desk, and the teachers will spray down. Kids will leave, and when the new kids come in for that class, those desks will be dry enough for them to sit down and have their class.
Great. All right. Anyone else on the board or any other questions come in? Anyone?
I have a question. For the high school 10-minute passing period, now that you brought that up, Sarah, how is that going to look for high schoolers? Because that mingling might happen in those 10 minutes and students might be forced to be hanging outside of classrooms as teachers are cleaning. So how will that work?
Jeff Clark, you're on mute.
Thanks. I think you can hear me now. The key is to communicate clear expectations to the students. They're going to have more time between classes. When they come back, I anticipate they're going to be anxious to and feel a great need to socialize with their peers. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell them, you can do that outside, socially distanced 6 feet apart. So they're going to have time to visit. The rules for the hallway is don't stop moving, don't stop and chat with people in the hallway, get outside. There's only 2 hallways, the 100 and the 400. So the 10-minute passing period is going to give them more than ample time to get to their next class, use the bathroom one at a time if they need to, and they'll have a little more time than they're used to pre-COVID between classes. They'll have some time to socialize. We're going to tell them, go ahead and do that, but do it outside, 6 feet socially distanced. And we're going to have supervision out between the classes to gently remind them to meet that standard.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, just as the masks are a non-negotiable, social distance will also be a non-negotiable. We'll need compliance from all staff, all students. And if students can't comply with that, they put our whole system at risk, and actions will be taken accordingly.
Thank you.
President Mether, I would make a recommendation to approve the secondary in-person learning plan.
I would second that motion.
Excellent. Does anybody have any other board members have any other comments?
I do.
Any discussion? Marty or Jacob, excuse me.
I've been probably had my heels dug in about this more than anybody on the board, and I'm really impressed with the plan that you guys have come up with, Michelle. I mean, there's a lot of people who worked on it, but someone's got to take the blame. Michelle, this is excellent. So thank you, and I would throw my support behind this opening plan.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Michelle and her team, because this is the most amazing and complex scheduling I've ever seen. It's amazing. I did it for a long time myself. I don't know if I could have ever come up with this plan. It's great. I know everybody worked hard, and I'm very proud of you all for putting this together. I know that the students are going to really, really be joyous about getting back together and to see their teachers. And I think Lincoln's kitty is absolutely beautiful.
So between Lillian's cat and Jacob's baby, it's been quite a meeting. Does anyone else have anything else to add? I would just echo my greatest thanks to everybody who has put this together. I feel confident that we're going to be able to do this. And I also feel confident in our ability to respond to any and all issues that come up. And I like this measured approach. I know it seems like it's taken forever, but really, I think we're doing better than just about any other district I've heard about. So I'm pretty proud to be associated with this district. So with that, I am going to call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Your secondary plan is a go.
Get him back in school.
Let's do it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Whew. That's a big deal. Okay. I'm feeling very excited and looking forward to seeing some kiddos on the 1st. All right. So then we're going to carry on to 10.09. We're going to go look at our continuous school improvement plans. Let's see, is there anything particular, or Cindy, you called for it to come off the consent agenda. Did you have a particular school you wanted to focus on, or what is your thinking?
Well, as I looked at the CSIPs, I didn't see, well, first of all, we haven't had data. So what other measurables are we using? And I just really wanted the board to have some conversation regarding the CSIPs. We've always done that. I got asked the other day, when's the board going to talk about those? Or I said, well, if they're in the consent agenda, then we don't talk about them, because that's part of not what we do. And so I would like to just really, I mean, I guess I felt better when board members were assigned schools, and so then I felt that people really reviewed each and every one. But I just have some concerns, and there's really nowhere in the plans that talk about the pandemic and what we're dealing with. So anyway, that was my concern about things. And I also found some typos and just some things I kind of want to go over, I guess.
Okay, and so how do you see that happening? Do we just going to call out each school individually? I'm not sure. I don't believe our elementary principals are here. How do you see us going forward with that? What
Well,
can
I don't know if we can bring it back next board meeting and have it a conversation. I was kind of hoping we could do a work session on it, because I know it's not an easy task. But I guess I would like some more measurables, because I'm assuming that we must have done some testing last school year, maybe not the standardized test, but we must have done some other testing within our buildings before we went into this pandemic.
Michelle or Superintendent Brewer, can you speak to that? My understanding is we had the mid-year CSIPs, had all the data that had happened, and then we left come March 1st, so none of the spring data is available to us. But I will allow Marty or Michelle to answer that.
Michelle, you can start and I'll follow up.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, again, and not to be cliche-like, but right, this has been a year unlike any other, and that includes the school improvement process. And Cindy, as you referenced, where is, in the school improvement plan, why aren't we calling out more about, the pandemic and or, the results of that and what we're doing. And so it was complicated to bring together while at the same time creating our hybrid plan and responding to students and their needs in the moment. And again, as we were bringing students in, we're learning and again creating new instructional strategies and assessments literally as we're going. So I say all that because there's a lot of variables at play, and our focus here as we came into August and September was to do everything we could to get health and safety practices in place. and our procedures so that we get students into school. And our admin and our school teams did that in amazing ways. And so that was our first piece. We also knew that we needed to find out about what the needs of our students were, not just academically, but social emotionally. But before we could get there, we had to make sure about those basic needs of safety, health, food, along with internet access. And so those were things that we concentrated on early on. And then as we've been bringing students back, if we go back in time to September, students, again, at K through 6, as they're coming back over time, they're learning technology. We're learning what are the best ways for us to do assessments. We try to capture our assessments in those before school family support conferences. So as you were at all the elementaries, every single elementary school had a plan in place to, you know, test their kindergartners on, you know, everything they could that we typically do for WA kids. And we were able to complete that during that time and by bringing kids in individually. For our primary grades and intermediate grades, every school had teams set up so that when students were either before or after their parent-teacher conference, they were doing a running record to hear how they were reading. And all the classrooms did some informal math pieces, again, operating within the frameworks of health and safety, and then within some time constraints. And then you go to middle school and high school back in the fall, as far as how are we going to know where our students were. What we know is that in the spring we did not have our SBA state data, so there's no state data that way. What we usually have as well in the spring is some of our more informal benchmark data that we use district-wide, like with the MAPS assessment. Again, given our situation last spring, we were not able to do those assessments, and so we didn't have that spring data. So the data that we had from last year, at best, was like our mid-year data from January and February, right? So we had some of those benchmark pieces, and those certainly have been included where possible, and we've looked at those. But in all reality, I mean, that's way back in January, right? And all of that springtime and summer and coming back, and we could look at that to sort of understand where we were. But our reality was that in the moment we had to, again, use our resources to assess as best we could where students were at right then. And every teacher, every team, every school did amazing work with the resources and time that we had. So again, I'm kind of laying that out to, as we go forward and we talk about middle school and high school, again, coming back in the fall, you know, they had the in-person conference. Teachers were, again, per their classroom, getting a feel of where students were. Teacher teams had met and talked about where their classes had gotten in the spring. All the classes, excuse me, had identified the most essential standards that had been covered, not just in the spring, but based on that, what they were going to need to cover in the fall. And again, at middle school and high school, our initial piece was we need to make sure about health, about safety, basic needs, access, and then within that, helping figure out what our students were still needing to know. So it's been complicated. We continue to want to understand our students' needs as elementary has come back. They've continued with the math and the ELA assessments, and most of those have been classroom-based. And we've, you know, done the running records. We have those, and we'll have even more data here as we come back. Middle school and high school, again, per class. Those teachers are using formative assessments, so whether that's an exit ticket or assignment to guide and inform their planning and their instruction right then in the moment. So for our school district right now, our different ways of assessment look different than they ever have before. And are they going to change and evolve this year still? Absolutely. We are working on that, and that is one of our main things. But we have to get students back in school, and we're continuing again to use classroom-based assessments to guide the real-time instruction, and we'll continue to evolve that over time. Someone might have, lots of people have asked, well, what about the state testing this year? As of right now, that's still on the books for all the levels, and I'm not sure where the state's going to head with that. I certainly have my own opinions, but right now we need to get students in and continuing to move them from where they are right now to where they need to be, and every teacher is doing that within their classroom.
Yeah, and so, typically in a typical year, we would look at CSIPs being presented to the board in early fall, September, October. This year, obviously, we're late. We're mid-January, but that's kind of a representation of what the school year has looked like for us. It's we are, putting forth every resource that we have, and that's not just Michelle, that's not just building principal, that's teachers, that's support staff. Every resource we have is to bring students back into our schools, and that goes much deeper than an assessment. We've got teams of teachers working across the district to look at all the standards that are taught in a given subject area at a given grade, and creating the essential or power standards to be able to really focus in and hone in. So almost like rewriting curriculum. And so this year, quite honestly and frankly, the CSEP, from the delivery to the board to like the application at the building level looks very different. And for that, I apologize. It's just our time and efforts have been spent on, doing what I think the board desires, which is creating opportunities and plans for students to return to the buildings. And so I'm open to, whatever the board desires at this point in time for potential approval, discussion, moving forward with the CSIPs, and we'll meet the expectations of the board.
May I speak, President Methner?
Please.
You might not want to hear this, but I'm going to stand in defense of Michelle and Marty right now. There is absolutely no way that we could do standardized testing of children even now. The scores would be so invalid and unreliable that it would be a waste of time to even attempt to do that. As a matter of fact, I don't understand why the teachers had to do CSIPs this year. Is it a state thing that made them have to do that? I don't get it. I thought it was an absolute waste of time. I have to speak in defense of teachers. For me, when I read the CSIPs, I don't even know where they found the time to fill in the blanks. Those things become an absolute burden. It seems to me like I'm a testing person, and I believe in assessment in all kinds of manners and a variety of assessment for each child that goes to school. Not just standardized tests, not just spelling test on Friday, not just teacher-made tests, but all kinds of assessments, because we know the problems with standardized testing in a normal setting, might as well in a pandemic in the middle of absolute chaos across our country. I have to praise this plan. I have to praise our teachers. I don't know how they're getting up and facing this every morning. This is an absolute incredible nightmare. And I think that needs to be recognized. I think each teacher and each staff member and every bus driver, and they have to be praised for what they are doing every day. And Marty, I want to go back to you and say, I know what you have done. I know what your staff has done. I recognize it. And Cindy, I just have to say to you that testing is not an important thing right now, because none of it would have any validity. So we should never test a child until we can do it with conviction and do it the way it should be done.
Director Long, you misunderstood. I never said we should do the testing. I said, what are the measurables in the CSIPs? And it is under WAC 180-16220. We are required by law to do these and be approved by the board.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I don't really care right now what the law says. We've suspended almost every other law that we've been. The governor has decided day in and day out what he wants to do, and then we have jumped through the hoops to get it done. I know the law says, Cindy, that we have to have CSIPs. I'm just saying it's a practical and rational manner that I don't think the CSIPs are worth a hoot right now. And I'm a board member who believes that. And I don't care if it is the law. I'm glad they wrote them, because the law says they have to write them. But other than that, that's not important to me as a board member right now. As a board member, it's important that children go back to school and that everybody is safe and sound and that their families are safe and sound. And that's about all I think we can do right now. And I'm glad that they were able to pick out the standards that they felt to be important at each grade level and each subject matter, because there would be no way they could even begin to teach to the standards as they have normally. So, but I do understand the law. Don't get me wrong. And I don't want to break the law because I don't want to go to jail.
Again, with the going to jail.
I'm not going to go to jail.
I appreciate this conversation because I think it's really quite valuable. And I just always want to remind everyone that it's not just the Port Angeles School District children who are suffering under this. They aren't the only ones who are losing learning time. I think we really need to, I know everyone says we have to give grace. I know it's become trite and overused. But the reality is the kiddo in Kenosha, Wisconsin is suffering the same as the kid in Port Angeles. It's not like our kids are falling farther behind than the kids in Kenosha.
No.
Everybody is under the same thing. So I really, I understand, I appreciate that the CSIPs were done. I do feel like right now we are in a situation, we are crisis teaching, crisis learning, crisis testing, and if anybody asks, if Reichdahl asks you, Superintendent Brewer, how this board or me in particular feels about doing any standardized testing this spring, I tell him I think he's crazy. And I will tell him the same thing because
I'll tell him too.
It will have no validity. It will have no purpose other than stressing out our teachers, stressing out our parents, stressing out our kids. It just is not valid. There's my 2 cents too. Sorry, Sandy, you got me all riled up.
I'm sorry.
Can I add
But I just think it needs to be said. I want the public to hear what I have to say about that.
The state of Washington is advocating, and Chris Reichdahl in the office, around waiving the SBAC this year. The feds declined that or denied that in the old administration, so it remains to be seen what happens when the new administration takes office in a week or so. So more to come on that. But I do know that the state of Washington is advocating for a waiver this year as it relates to standard testing.
But I do think we have data points, Marty, that you could show. You've shared those with us in our agenda planning meetings. There are data points out there that that are available. They're grades. Children have gotten grades. I'm understanding that they have, and that can be looked at.
Sarah, this is Katie. I just would really appreciate a little more time on these. I would really like to table the vote right now. So maybe next meeting. I've already been in contact with Superintendent Brewer. I'll meet with him next week to kind of go over them. As a new board member and all the work that I put into the equity policy work this week, it was just too much. So I'd really like some extra time on those.
Okay, my only question then to Superintendent Brewer is, I know we're already a little bit behind. At what point do these need to be accepted?
Tabling them till the next meeting will not impact us.
All right.
We have a WAC responsibility to have board approved CSEPs, a couple of weeks will be fine.
Excellent. All right, and I would say both Katie and anyone else who feels, Cindy, to make an appointment with Superintendent Brewer to get your questions answered regarding what metrics are out there and available to us. So with that, without objection, I think we will table these until the next meeting, if that is all right with everyone.
I'm good.
Okay.
Sarah, may I speak one more time, please?
Please.
Thank you. So I appreciate everyone's comments. I appreciate Cindy's comments, and she's right. We're having to look at different metrics, different data. And so I want to clarify the metrics that we are looking at. While you read our plan, and you'll see in many of them that we still had the SBA in there, right? That right now that still is viable. But as you read deeper into our plans, and as you talk with our building principal, our focus has been to be around engagement. And when we can have students engaged, then we know they're attending. And once we can have them engaged and attending, then we know that we can get after the academics and the achievement or the grades. But those things have to happen in that order. And over time, since September, we've monitored the number of families who have not had access to computer equipment, to Wi-Fi, and we have seen that number diminish. So the metrics that we're looking at, yes, they have changed for this school year, but they're super important. And when we look at daily attendance, and we're looking at students that are logging into their Google Meets, we're looking at students who are logging into their classroom, we're looking at students at elementary that are coming in. When we don't see students engaged and we have those list of names, every single building has a team, has a procedure in place to make contact with that student and with that family. And if that doesn't happen from the teacher, if they're not able to do that or get contact, then they have a building team that's ready to go to do the next step. And if that doesn't work, then they have another team where we're pulling in our district navigators. What does our data look like for that? Our data was a long list of kids and families, and over time, every single one of these buildings has decreased the number of students that are not engaged. That's phenomenal. And now if we want to look at achievement, and again, we're looking at that in different ways. If we want to look at elementary as far as the Eureka assessments on their end of modules, we continue to see that to be strong at our elementaries. When we look at data, and as I referenced earlier, we were talking about running records and looking at data. I can tell you right now which grade level has taken the hit for our entire district. It is our current first graders. They were our kindergartners last year. They missed that end of kindergarten, that opportunity to build on their reading skills, and then coming back to start remotely. I've never seen numbers of students not being successful with reading as I have in 26 years at first grade. That is our sense of urgency for our entire district, is that first grade level. As we look at other grade levels, they certainly have been impacted, but nowhere near to that extent. And we're going to continue to make progress. But those are the kind of data points that we're looking at. And when you read through these school improvement plans, you know, Marty can speak to this. I was hesitant because it's not our usual piece, and it was hard to not do it in the same way, but we couldn't. That wouldn't be honoring the work that our teachers are doing and our staff is doing. So as you read through these, you'll see those threads around engagement, around attendance, around, yes, achievement, but we're also looking at how are we meeting the needs of our students with their social emotional. So there's a lot going on. The metrics of how we're going to measure progress over time this year are going to look different. And I will commit and am committed to continuing to fine tune that. But what every teacher and every principal is committed to, that every child from where they started this year in our district and where they end up in June is going to make forward progress. And we're continuing to make plans to support those students who have been most impacted by the pandemic and our remote learning. So you can tell I'm passionate about it, but we're doing the work, and the work is the hardest work we've ever done. And so every teacher, every staff member, they're doing it. It just looks different. And I would recommend that we have a work session and that every building principal has an opportunity to share with you what it looks like, sounds like, feels like at their building level, because that is where the work is happening, and it is happening. It just looks different.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I believe everybody agreed to a tabling. If anything, nobody has anything else to add, I guess we'll move on to community comments, which is 11.01. And Carmen, I believe we have some comments in the waiting.
Yes, we have one comment that has been submitted by Lindsay Stroman Warren. So I will go ahead and allow you to unmute. Before making your comments, if you could please state your name and address, and then you will have 3 minutes to speak. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Thank you. Hi, Lindsay Sherman-Warren. I'm at 306 West 3rd Street in Port Angeles, and I wanted to comment on the equity plan discussion at the beginning of this meeting several hours ago. I really appreciate the board taking on that work, and at the same time, I felt like we were going back to the beginning in a process that has been going on for years and decades. You don't need to reinvent the wheel on what equity looks like for the district in terms of what your goals are. The mission statement for the school district, the vision statement for the school district, the beliefs for the school district, your strategic plan, all of that points toward universal goals of equity for all students. All students will graduate prepared for lifelong learning. Each student to live, work, and learn successfully in a changing world. Every student can learn, every person has worth, school safety matters. So I want to highlight two phrases that I heard Michelle say in the last discussion. One was focusing on the students who are most impacted. The other was an equity lens. Michelle's looking at this as a process, which is, I think, the way that I hope the school district will look at it too. That the process is, how do we reach those goals? And where are we failing to reach those goals? There was some discussion in the work session about, do we even have a problem? It's like, go back to the all-school staff assembly at the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year, where Superintendent Brewer and Dr. Jeff Duncan Andrade presented on equity and introduced the equity initiative to the entire school staff to a standing ovation. And the data is there, and you've been seeing it for years. So it was a little disheartening to see us kind of go back to square one in that conversation. But we have to always, meet people where they're at. And so recognizing that basic principle of constructivist education, let's understand where that is. That's why I threw in the comments and a question about how in Clallam County, Black youth ages 10 to 17 are 5.5 times as likely to be referred to juvenile court as white youth. That is a disparity that is just untenable. And it's actually getting worse because the previous year's report was 3.8 times, not 5.5 times. While that is the courts, the studies of that from the Office of Juvenile Justice of the Department of Children, Youth, and Families says that it's actually a community-wide problem, and the evidence is showing more and more that it's not the courts alone that can solve that. So, we in the school district, we in the city, we in the county have to take responsibility for that. And if we're shoving 5.5 times as many Black kids into the school to prison pipeline as we are white kids, that is untenable, and that has no basis in any kind of racial equity, let alone the fact that we're shoving any kids into a school to prison pipeline. So please go back and review your policies, your mission.
Thank you, Lindsay. I apologize to interrupt, but your time is up.
All right, Lindsay, I appreciate your comments very much. I would love to have you write up anything else that you felt like you still wanted to get across, or even any of that. I would love that summation. And if you want to send that to Jenny, she'll make sure that the whole board gets the rest of it. So thank you for staying with us this whole time to get your point across. I appreciate it. I know these meetings can be long, but being on the city council, I'm sure you live that as well. Okay, and were there any other comments? Carmen, no others?
No other comment.
Okay. So then that leads us to 12.01, which is director's comments. I think as has become customary, we should start with our kiddos, who aren't really kiddos. They're at this point young women about looking at going off to college. Let's start with Lakin this time.
Hi. So at Lincoln, like how Mace had said, there isn't, we've been going to class, settling into I guess it's not really new anymore, but after winter break, we've been settling into that and just been sort of starting fresh, I guess, is the best way I can put it. We've definitely been working. There isn't really a whole lot going on, so there's not a whole lot to report on. We've been people who've been needing help have been able to go in and get it, and we've just been focusing on starting a new year. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Maisie Tucker.
Hi. So I just wanted to say I was so excited I'm always excited to go to the school board meeting, but especially tonight when I saw what was on the agenda for returning to school, as I've been a big supporter of that, as have all of you. And I just wanted to say, like Lakin was saying, there's not much to report, same old, but sports and school returning in some capacity is some of the best news, if not the best news I have heard all year, or maybe since March 13th. And it makes me really happy to know that the board and the teachers and the administration and everyone involved in this have their work is finally paying off. And so thank you all for that. And also I wanted to say that I'm really happy now that we're back from break to see that we had some student voice with the student survey before break. So I'm really happy to see that. But overall, I think we have a happy student body at PHS tonight hearing this news. So thank you so much. And that's all I have to share.
Thank you, ladies. So let's start with is Director Wright, are you still awake over there?
I'll make it.
All right.
I'm gonna sleep when he's in kindergarten.
It's all right, you'll survive.
Yeah, I've been holed up for the last 3 weeks, just hanging out with this baby. But since that, our big vote back in Thanksgiving, I've been monitoring case numbers and watching what's been going on, and watching them rise up towards Christmas and then come back down. So it's been nice to see that the numbers in the community were coming down, and then watching a plan come together to get kids back in school has been really great. Combine that with vaccinations on the way, and the adjusting of the moderate number of cases per 100,000, all that put together made for a really, really nice to put a bow on it tonight and get the kids back in school. So I've been observing from afar, covered in spit up.
Well, Jacob, I'm certain you understand that there are a lot of very jealous women on this who would take spit up in a heartbeat if we could snuggle a baby right now.
That's pretty great.
I know, but as you're tired, I get it. All right, how about, I can see Director Kelly.
So since the last board meeting, I attended an ESD legislative meeting. I attended a Clown County DNR Trust Lands meeting with the commissioners and just other beneficiaries across the state where we talk about what's going on with DNR lands. Wasda Trust Lands meeting, did a Zoom meeting, 24th District Legislative meeting with our fellow school board directors from Directorate 24. I attended a Stride and OSPI land acknowledgement training, which was really good, where they're teaching all their OSPI staff about land acknowledgement. So that's really kind of exciting. Attended several WASDA COVID-19 weekly meetings. You got a copy of that today. And I was invited to the Big Boy Pond visit the day after it snowed. So that was great, where lots of people got together to talk about the Big Boy Pond thing. And then I attended the Wasda, or PASD Welcome Back meeting that Marty hosted, and the government to government meeting, Zoom meeting. We're starting to have those every month now. And we went to a policy committee, and I did a Wasda Trust Lands Communications meeting where we're coming up with a plan for community trust lands to beneficiaries and to districts. And then I did a Wasda Legislative Committee meeting last Saturday regarding government to government. And the Legislative Committee is starting to get to know what all the what all the committees do in Wasda, which is really good for those committees. So.
Excellent, thank you. Katie, Director Marks.
I love going after Cindy.
Oh, you want me to put it on someone else? I'm happy to.
Yeah, you know, the only thing I really want to say today is I'm just so appreciative that the kids are going back to school. I can't tell you as a parent how much I appreciate this. I see the excitement. You know, the motivation is really going to pay off, and I just realized how much work it's been for Michelle and the team and all the teachers figuring out how to teach online and remotely. It's just unimaginable. So I'm just grateful to everyone. So thank you. That's all I want to say.
Excellent. So that takes me to Dr. Long.
I pass.
Okay, she passes. I think we've probably all been to sort of the same things. So I will also pass. I'm very excited though, again, as Katie said, everyone else, that we're getting back. I want everyone to know how much the board appreciates it, and that we are listening, and we have heard there's some teacher concerns, and we've heard those, and we're always available to be open to that and to make sure that this is working. And I think that we have done that. It's a great plan. So with that, I think we're getting down to the end of it. We have Superintendent Brewer, your report.
Yeah, so you know, each of you have mentioned this, and it's a exciting day to bring our K-6 students back on Monday. Another glorious day for Port Angeles education, and honestly, it's great to see happy students, happy parents, happy teachers. You know, we're all doing what we love to do here. So just again, appreciative to the staff for their dedication to make it all work. Every level of this organization has to work to carry out all of the safeguards necessary to make sure that our schools are considered safe. And that is occurring, and I am very appreciative of the work there. Also, on Monday and Tuesday, we had a visitor from the Seattle Times. She had an opportunity to spend 2 full days with staff from Dry Creek Elementary School, as well as she spent some time at the Learning Center out on tribal lands. And I'm happy to report that she'll do a feature article on reopening of schools and all of the work that it takes to do or that it takes to reopen a school in the Seattle Times. And it will be a 2-part series. First part will be focusing on the reopening. The second part, I'm really excited to identify that she'll do a story specifically on the Learning Center that the tribe has created out on tribal land. So that's really, really exciting. She was very appreciative of the opportunity, and I think it's going to be quite a story when you have a reporter that shows up from the Seattle Times and spends 2 full days with our staff. It's going to be quite a story that really tells and puts a shining light on the hard work that's been done here, and really, you know, will bring a positive tone to our district. So I'm very appreciative of that. Moving forward, we have a number of Martin Luther King events over the next several days. I know the high school has put together a really nice video that will be released tomorrow. And they did a nice job as always. I haven't had a chance to review it start to finish because it was emailed to me during this meeting, but I look forward in doing so. It's an important time of our year and time to reflect on what Dr. Martin Luther King meant to this nation. And he was having the same conversations that we were having decades ago. We were having that conversation just a few hours ago around equity, and want to talk about a man before his time. And, you know, I had an opportunity to be interviewed by some high school students for their video up at the high school, and really reflected, but I think he stood for unity, he stood for equity, and he stood for peace. And if there are three things that we as Americans can really focus in on right now, that's, you know, I think that's where we need to be. And that's not a political statement by any means. It's something that I just think our nation really needs at this point in time. So with that being said, I will move along, but thank you for the opportunity, and it's been a great meeting.
Thank you, Superintendent Brewer. So with that, if there's nothing else, we are going to finish with 13.01, items for the next agenda. We don't know yet where we're going to be, but.
Yeah, so our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 28th. And as we outlined this evening, we will have a study session that evening to continue the conversation and dialogue around our equity work. At the regular meeting, it starts at 7 p.m. We will have the Jefferson Elementary School report, the student of the month from Jefferson. We'll have an enrollment report and a December financial report. And finally, I also want to, you've heard her several times this evening, but our new communications coordinator is Carmen Geyer. You approved her on the consent agenda tonight. So this was her first official function as she was approved by the board this evening. So thank you for doing so. And I want to welcome Carmen to the team. She's done a great job in her first week and a half on the job. So thank you.
Absolutely, welcome. Okay, so with that, anything further? Otherwise, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and thank you all for attending. Bling, bling.